Archaeologists found this mummy after 2,000 years, but the secret behind it terrified the world. There are things buried beneath the earth not to be forgotten, but to ensure no one ever dares to uncover them. There are tombs that, when opened, reveal something far more terrifying than bones: what remains disturbingly intact inside. There are faces that have been dead for hundreds of years, yet their expressions look as if they have just endured an unimaginable horror. And most unsettling of all, there are discoveries that even scientists find chilling, because the deeper they investigate, the less they understand what truly happened. If the past has really been laid to rest, then why does it haunt the living so deeply every time it is unearthed? Welcome to the Ancient History Channel, where secrets buried deep beneath the ground are not only told, but awakened in ways that make it impossible to look away. Today, we will trace the footsteps of archaeological discoveries that have shocked the world. Stories so unbelievable that, if turned into films, many would dismiss them as fiction. From mummies with bizarre expressions, to mysterious burial rituals, to artifacts bearing the marks of a time when humans were willing to do anything to defy death. All of it emerges in ways more real and more terrifying than you could imagine. As we dive deeper into each discovery, you'll realize that archaeology is not just about uncovering the past. It is a journey of confronting truths that modern humanity may not be ready to fully understand. Some mysteries only grow more tangled the more they are unraveled. Some truths, once revealed, make people wish they had never known them at all. So prepare yourself, because what you are about to see may change the way you look at history forever. Now, are you ready? If you are, let's begin with the very first discovery. 2,500-year-old Egyptian mummy reveals a chilling secret in an American hospital. You know, our ancient world has always been mysterious and fascinating. There are secrets that seem to have been buried by time forever, but sometimes, all it takes is opening a coffin for everything to leave people standing in stunned silence. A powerful example of this is the story of an ancient mummy over 2,500 years old named Pota Hershe, a stone carver around 40 years old who lived more than 2.5 millennia ago in ancient Egypt. He was discovered in a burial ground in the city of Thebes, modern-day Luxor, Egypt, on the west bank of the Nile River. No one knows exactly how he lived, what illnesses he may have suffered from, or the circumstances of his death. But one thing is certain: his body was mummified with remarkable sophistication and has endured for thousands of years. The strange journey began on April 25, 1823, when the mummy was brought to the port city of Boston, Massachusetts, by a Dutch businessman named Jacob van Lennep as a special gift to the city. It was immediately transferred to Massachusetts General Hospital, becoming one of the first Egyptian mummies ever to appear in the United States. At that time, most Americans had never seen a real mummy in person. Curiosity exploded. Everyone wanted to witness a person from the distant past. To raise funds for the hospital, visitors were charged 25 cents per viewing, and long lines of people formed just for a chance to see a body that had existed for more than 2 millennia. It didn't stop there. Due to overwhelming demand, the hospital even took the mummy on tour across several major U.S. cities, with ticket prices rising to as much as $2.50 per viewing, a significant amount of money in the 19th century. In this way, Pota Hershe became one of the most unusual exhibition stars of his time. After gaining widespread attention, the mummy was returned to Massachusetts and remained on display for nearly 200 years, still intact inside its coffin, standing upright just as it had been originally placed. However, this very position gradually caused internal damage due to gravity, slowly degrading its structure over time. Then came a turning point. Just last week, doctors and experts at the hospital decided to remove the mummy from its coffin for deeper study. This marked the first time in nearly 2 centuries that Pota Hershe had been freed from his familiar protective casing. And when the coffin was opened, something striking appeared: a thick layer of white salt covering the entire body, a natural result of the ancient mummification process that had lasted thousands of years. The doctors carefully used cotton pads soaked in a moisturizing solution to clean away each layer of long-accumulated salt. Slowly, with meticulous effort, a dark, rigid, but still fully intact human form began to emerge. But what shocked the research team the most was not the preservation itself. It was a completely unexpected discovery. A wooden broom handle had been found running through the mummy's skull down into the upper torso. This immediately raised a chilling question: Was this the result of an accident, or was it part of a specialized stabilization technique used by ancient Egyptian embalmers, something we still don't fully understand? At the same time, examination of the skeletal system revealed signs that the man had suffered a serious illness during childhood, which had stunted his bone development for a prolonged period. This discovery opens up even more theories about his mysterious life. Currently, the team of experts is working urgently to restore the ancient coffin and the deteriorated linen wrappings. However, all of this must be completed within just 3 days before the mummy is placed back into a vacuum-sealed glass case for long-term preservation. In the near future, Pota Hershe will be displayed at the George Walter Vincent Smith Art Museum in Springfield, Massachusetts, continuing to tell a story that has remained unsolved for over 2,500 years. Yet the biggest question still remains: was that wooden handle part of an ancient ritual? Or is it a mystery history has never been able to explain? What do you think the answer is? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because who knows, your idea might just help scientists unlock the secrets of this ancient mummy. And wouldn't that be incredible? The 2,400-year-old tomb of the philosopher Aristotle. Have you ever wondered whether one of the greatest minds in human history, the philosopher Aristotle, after more than 2,300 years since his death, is truly resting where people have long believed? It sounds like a question that belongs only in textbooks, right? But the truth is, that question may have just been partially answered through a groundbreaking archaeological discovery in the ancient city of Stagira, in central Macedonia, Greece. The story begins with a long and persistent journey, 20 years of continuous excavation by Greek archaeologists. It wasn't until the Aristotle 2,400 Years World Congress, held from May 23 to May 28, 2016 in Thessaloniki, Greece, that archaeologist Kostas Sismenides officially announced a discovery that stunned the academic world, an ancient tomb they believe could be the final resting place of Aristotle. Aristotle was born in 384 BC in Stagira, Greece, and died in 322 BC in Chalcis on the island of Euboea. For centuries, Chalcis has been considered his burial site. However, this new discovery presents an entirely different possibility. Based on archaeological evidence, it is believed that the people of Stagira, his hometown, may have brought his ashes back to their city as a way of honoring their most illustrious citizen. If this is true, then history may have misunderstood his final resting place for thousands of years. The tomb was discovered right in the center of Stagira, near the Agora, the marketplace and public hub of the ancient city, at a location that overlooks the surrounding area. That alone suggests the structure was anything but ordinary. It likely held great significance. The tomb structure features a domed design built atop a mound with a marble-paved floor and has been dated to the Hellenistic period, 323 to 31 BC. Interestingly, researchers observed that the structure appeared to have been built rather hastily at first, but was later upgraded with higher quality materials, as if it had been enhanced to properly honor an extremely important figure. Outside the tomb, there is an altar and a square platform, indicating that the site may have once been used for rituals or commemorative ceremonies. The dome rises to a height of approximately 33 feet, creating a solemn and imposing space befitting a philosopher of such stature. Delving deeper into the structure, archaeologists also discovered a tower pillar in the Eastern Roman Byzantine style placed directly on the stone floor, along with a semicircular wall about 6.5 feet high surrounding the tomb. Notably, a clearly defined pathway leads directly to the structure, suggesting it was designed for visitors who came to pay their respects to Aristotle. You might be wondering, is this truly Aristotle's tomb? The answer is still under debate. However, the findings uncovered at the site make the theory highly compelling. During the excavation, the research team discovered numerous ancient pottery fragments and more than 50 coins minted during the reign of Alexander the Great, Aristotle's most famous student. These coins are not only valuable artifacts, but also serve as important chronological markers that help confirm the dating of the structure. However, the history of this tomb does not end in antiquity. Researchers have also found evidence that the structure was once destroyed by the Byzantines, who later built a square tower on top of it, drastically altering its original form. This only deepens the mystery. Why would such an important commemorative structure be destroyed? And what caused it to be forgotten for centuries before being rediscovered? At present, archaeologists are continuing their investigations to determine the true identity of this tomb. But regardless of the final conclusion, the discovery in Stagira, Greece, has already opened an entirely new chapter in our understanding of Aristotle's life and legacy. Perhaps the most thought-provoking question now is not just, is this really Aristotle's tomb? But rather, how many other historical secrets are still lying beneath the ground, waiting to be uncovered? Just like this one. 2,000-year-old treasure buried inside a fortress in Crimea. Some stories in history are not written in ink, but carved by fear, desperation, and loyalty, carried through to the very end. And the treasure recently discovered at an ancient fortress in Artesian, on the Crimean Peninsula, now part of Ukraine, is one such story. This discovery was announced by archaeologists in a report published in the journal Ancient Civilizations from Scythia to Siberia, after many years of excavation at the fortress site. What makes it remarkable is that what they uncovered was not just a collection of artifacts, but the remnants of a tragedy that took place nearly 2,000 years ago, when an entire community faced invasion by the Roman army. Inside the ancient fortress, which spans roughly 3.2 acres, researchers discovered 2 buried treasure hoards, along with more than 200 bronze coins, numerous pieces of jewelry made of gold, silver, and bronze, and even ancient glass vessels hidden deep beneath layers of soil and stone. According to Professor Nikolai Vinokurov of the Moscow State Pedagogical University in Russia, the Artesian fortress was subjected to a fierce Roman assault at the time. Wealthy residents, along with local inhabitants, chose to hide their valuables within the fortress walls, hoping that no matter what happened, their wealth would not be looted. But reality turned out to be far more brutal. At that time, the Bosporan kingdom, of which Artesian was a part, was caught in a civil war between 2 brothers, Mithridates VIII, who sought independence from Roman control, and Codus I, who aligned himself with the increasingly powerful Roman Empire. In the end, Rome intervened by sending troops to support Codus I, helping him seize control of the Bosporan capital. As a result, settlements loyal to Mithridates, including Artesian, were attacked and burned to the ground. In that moment of life and death, the people of Artesian gathered inside the fortress, not only to protect one another, but perhaps also to await an inevitable fate. What deeply unsettled archaeologists is a striking hypothesis, that these treasures were not merely hidden possessions, but may have been part of a collective funerary ritual, a way of preparing for death when they realized there was no escape. Supporting this chilling idea is an intriguing detail. Each buried hoard contained exactly 55 coins minted by Mithridates VIII. This precise number has sparked ongoing debate among researchers. Is it a coincidence, or does it represent a ritual number with special meaning to the community at that time? What remains in the fortress is not only wealth and jewelry, but also clear traces of ancient Greek culture. Although Artesian lies nearly 620 miles from Greece, its inhabitants preserved Greek customs, lifestyle, and artistic traditions across generations. Among the artifacts, archaeologists found a silver brooch engraved with the image of Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love. There were also gold rings set with gemstones, intricately carved with figures of Nemesis, the goddess of justice, and Tyche, the goddess of fortune. These details reveal that the spiritual life of the people of Artesian remained deeply connected to the ancient Greek world. As excavations expanded into the burned areas, the research team uncovered further evidence that this had once been a thriving community, one that was completely destroyed following the Roman attack around 45 AD. Later, after Codus I was installed as king by Rome, the area was rebuilt. However, the treasures of the former residents remained buried underground forever, silent witnesses to the fall of a community caught in the tides of power, until the day archaeologists finally unearthed them and brought their story back into the light. The Screaming Mummy of Egypt, a 3,000-year-old mystery in Tomb DB32, that still haunts the world. There are faces from the past that, once seen, can never be forgotten. And among them, perhaps the most haunting is the so-called Screaming Mummy, a mystery discovered deep within an ancient tomb at Deir el-Bahri, about 300 miles south of Cairo, Egypt. The story began in 1881, when archaeologists uncovered a tomb known as DB320 at the site, a hidden chamber buried deep underground, as if deliberately concealed from the outside world. Inside, they found around 40 ancient mummies, all of which had been relocated from tombs in the Valley of the Kings to protect them from widespread grave robbing in ancient times. But among dozens of mummies belonging to famous pharaohs and royal figures, one case made everyone pause longer than usual. An unidentified mummy placed at the end of a steep shaft approximately 46 feet deep, with no identifying marks on its coffin. At the time, however, this individual was largely overlooked, overshadowed by the presence of legendary figures such as Pharaoh Ramses II, Seti I, and Thutmose III, names far too prominent in ancient Egyptian history. According to Egyptologist Dylan Bickerstaff, researchers at the time focused primarily on these well-known royal mummies, leaving this one almost forgotten for years. It wasn't until 5 years later, in 1886, that they returned to examine the mummy more closely. When the wrappings were finally removed, the researchers were stunned. The face inside did not resemble someone peacefully at rest. It looked as if the person were screaming in unbearable agony. The mouth was open, the facial muscles frozen in an expression of terror so intense it sent chills down the spine. From that moment on, the name Screaming Mummy was born. Unfortunately, because there was no name or inscription on the coffin, scientists could only refer to him as Unknown Man E, and the mummy was eventually moved to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo for preservation. Do you know what makes this story even more unsettling? It's the burial context. The mummies in tomb DB320 are believed to have been moved there during the late Ramesside period, when tomb robbery was rampant in ancient Egypt. To protect royal remains, high-ranking priests secretly relocated dozens of mummies to this remote location, bringing along burial goods while still attempting to preserve each individual's identity. In ancient Egyptian belief, a person who died without a name could not pass into the afterlife. Because of this, some theories suggest that Unknown Man E may have been cursed, condemned to remain forever unrecognized, even in death. It wasn't until 2008 that a research team, supported by the National Geographic Channel, revisited the mystery. They proposed 3 main theories regarding the mummy's identity. The first suggested he was an Egyptian official who had been buried improperly. His body may have been treated with quicklime and covered with animal skins, possibly sheep or goat hides. In ancient Egyptian culture, these animals were considered impure, and covering a body with their skins was believed to prevent the soul from entering the afterlife. However, this theory was quickly dismissed, as the mummy was found among royal individuals. The second theory proposed that he was a foreign prince who died in Egypt and could not be returned to his homeland. But this also failed to explain the complete absence of any identifying information on the coffin. Then came a crucial breakthrough through CT scanning. Unknown Man E was, in fact, Egyptian, and his skull features bore strong resemblance to royal lineage. From there, researchers began to consider the most shocking theory, that he may have been Prince Pentawere, the son of Pharaoh Ramses III, who was accused of participating in a plot to assassinate his own father. According to ancient papyrus records, around the 12th century BC, Queen Tiye and her son Pentawere were involved in a conspiracy to kill the king. When the plot was discovered, those involved were executed or forced to commit suicide by poison. What's especially chilling is that Pentaware's punishment may not have been limited to death. It may have included the complete erasure of his identity. This could explain why the mummy bears no name at all, as if the punishment was meant to last for eternity. And what about that screaming face? Archaeologists believe it is not an expression of pain at the moment of death, but rather the result of the body collapsing backward, causing the facial muscles to lock into that terrifying position. Even so, the mystery is far from over. Scientists are planning further DNA analysis to determine whether Unknown Man E truly was the son of Ramses III. Until then, the biggest question still lingers. Is this a story of guilt or a tragedy buried beneath the sands of Egypt for thousands of years? 300-year-old mother and child mummy discovered beneath a church crypt in Hungary. Have you ever imagined that a simple renovation inside an old church could uncover an entire world forgotten for centuries? If not, let's travel back to the beginning of 1994. That year, during restoration work at Vach Church in the city of Vach, Hungary, workers unexpectedly discovered a sealed entrance leading down into a crypt that had been hidden for centuries. They immediately reported it, and an archaeological team was sent to the site. As the archaeologists cleared away layers of dirt and debris, a chilling secret gradually emerged. Beneath the church lay a vast crypt containing around 250 naturally mummified bodies, resting silently in the darkness for more than 300 years. But among those hundreds of mummies, one discovery drew particular attention from scientists, a story not just about death, but about motherhood frozen in time. It was the mummified remains of a 38-year-old woman named Veronica Skripets and her infant son, about 1 year old, found lying near each other in the same underground crypt beneath the church. According to initial studies, both likely died from tuberculosis, a disease that once ravaged Europe at a time when medicine was still extremely primitive. There were no antibiotics, no vaccines. Illnesses that seem manageable today could claim entire families in a short period. This reality led anthropologist Ildikó Szikosi of Hungary to state plainly that child mortality rates at the time were extraordinarily high, and what remains in the crypt serves as clear evidence of an era when medical science had not yet advanced. But the story doesn't end there. Recently, doctors and experts from the Global Medical Center of Orange County in Santa Ana, California, have planned a special study, a virtual autopsy using CT scanning technology on the two mummies. According to CT research specialist Jim Sutherland, the scanning process can reveal details invisible to the naked eye. He noted that the mother's body remains remarkably intact from head to toe, while the child's remains show some small bone fragments that have deteriorated over time. This discovery has left scientists both curious and cautious, as they still cannot fully predict what the scan data might reveal. Sutherland himself admitted that the experience feels like lifting the veil on a story that has never been told. Although the initial hypothesis suggests the mother may have died from tuberculosis, only after completing the CT analysis will researchers be able to confirm the exact cause of death and better understand what happened during the final days of both mother and child. What makes this story so remarkable is not just the number of mummies found in the crypt, around 250 bodies, but the fact that they were preserved naturally, as if time itself had frozen everything beneath the church in Vach, Hungary. And within that frozen space, the image of a mother lying beside her young child for more than 3 centuries is something that deeply moves anyone who hears it. This is not a story of power or war, but a deeply human tragedy, the loss of ordinary lives in a time when medicine could not save them. At present, the CT scan results are expected to be released by the end of next month, and the scientific community is waiting for each piece of data as if listening to a voice from the past. So let's wait and see what truly happened to this mother and child, whose story has remained hidden for over 300 years. Mummified girl holding an intact rose in her coffin for 145 years. Some discoveries don't just surprise people, they leave them silent for a few seconds, overwhelmed by emotions that are hard to put into words. The story of a young girl found after 145 years beneath the ground in San Francisco, California, United States, is one of those cases. It all began on May 8th, when a group of workers were doing landscaping in the yard of an ordinary home owned by Erica Carner. While digging beneath the concrete floor of the garage, they struck a strange, hard object. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a coffin about 3.3 feet long, made of lead and copper. News quickly reached archaeologists, who arrived at the scene and immediately began excavation. When the archaeologists opened the glass lid of the coffin, everyone was stunned. Inside lay the body of a little girl, about 3 years old, dressed in a pure white gown. Her blonde hair was still perfectly preserved, and most remarkably, she was still holding a red rose in her hands. Her skin, her hair, even the flower, could still be clearly seen through the glass. It was a scene both beautiful and haunting, as if time had somehow frozen at the exact moment she was laid to rest. According to researchers, the girl may have originally been buried at the Oddfellows Cemetery, once a large cemetery in San Francisco. However, in 1890, local authorities decided to close the cemetery to redevelop the area. By the 1920s, around 180,000 sets of remains had been relocated elsewhere, yet it seems that not all were moved. This little girl may have been one of those left behind, resting quietly underground for over a century, completely unknown. What makes the story even more remarkable is the way she was buried. The girl wore a long white dress, her hair adorned with lavender flowers, and her coffin was lined with purple velvet. Everything suggests that she was deeply loved and given a respectful burial by her family. Tragically, however, her identity has been completely lost to time. No one knows who she was, where her family came from, or what caused her death at just 3 years old. One of Carner's 2 children, after hearing the story, gave her the name Miranda, a way to ensure she would no longer remain an anonymous soul. From that moment on, an unexpected responsibility fell upon the homeowner herself, Erica Carner. Despite having no connection to the girl, she was required to handle the entire situation, including obtaining a death certificate and arranging for reburial. The cost reached $10,000, a significant amount, and it left Carner understandably frustrated. She argued that the cemetery relocation had been the city's decision over a century ago, and that they should be responsible for what had been left behind. Not stopping there, she contacted the organization Garden of Innocence, a group dedicated to providing proper burials for unidentified children. Representatives from the organization hoped to determine the girl's true identity using modern methods before reinterring her at Greenlawn Cemetery in Colma, California, United States this coming summer. You see, this story is not just a sleuthy archaeological discovery, it is also a deeply meaningful reminder. Sometimes, right beneath our feet, under layers of seemingly lifeless concrete, there may exist stories that have never been told. So if it were you, if one day you discovered a secret like this in your own home, would you choose to forget it? Or help bring that story back to life once more? Or is there an even more humane way to handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below so everyone can hear your perspective. 1. 1,000-year-old child mummy discovered amid modern construction in Peru. Imagine this. On an ordinary day, as workers prepare to build a new road, something unexpected emerges beneath the soil. The remains of a child who lived more than 1,000 years ago. Would you believe it? It may sound unbelievable, but this is a completely real story that recently took place at the Puruchuco Archaeological site in Lima, Peru. The discovery happened during a routine land survey conducted by archaeologists in support of a government construction project. In what seemed like a very ordinary process, they unexpectedly uncovered the mummy of a child dating back over a millennium from a time before the Inca Empire. What's remarkable is that Puruchuco is not an unfamiliar site. It is considered the largest Inca-era cemetery ever excavated in Peru. Yet, after more than 60 years of research, archaeologists have only explored about 10% of the site, an astonishing figure when you think about how much still lies hidden beneath the ground. Even within that small portion, around 2,000 mummies have already been discovered, along with countless artifacts such as pottery, hundreds of finely woven textiles, and coins made of copper, silver, and even gold. In other words, nearly every layer of soil at Puruchuco has a story from the past waiting to be told. Returning to this particular discovery, the child's mummy was not found alone. It was part of a burial complex containing 26 graves where both adults and children had been laid to rest. In fact, archaeologists uncovered dozens of additional mummies within the same area. According to archaeologist Guillermo Koch, a member of the research team, approximately 40 mummies have been excavated from this site so far, and that number is expected to continue rising in the near future. It's striking how, the deeper they dig, the more vividly the past reveals itself. What truly astonished scientists is the exceptional state of preservation of these mummies. Despite being thousands of years old, many of the bodies have retained their original form. In fact, in early 2015, a mummy discovered in Peru still had one eye intact, as if time had never touched it. Details like these make the research incredibly valuable, offering authentic insights into the lives, health, and culture of ancient people. The child's mummy from this discovery was quickly transferred to a museum immediately after excavation to ensure proper preservation and to support further in-depth study. Looking at the bigger picture, Peru in recent years has become something of a living treasure trove for archaeology. Thousands of mummies have been uncovered, each one a piece of history. Among the most famous is the Juanita Ice Maiden, a young girl preserved in ice atop a mountain, remaining remarkably intact after hundreds of years. Discoveries like these have not only shocked the scientific community, but have also prompted the world to reevaluate ancient civilizations in South America. Returning to the child found at Puruchuco, what lingers in people's minds is not just the fact that the mummy is over 1,000 years old, but the questions it raises. What kind of world did this child live in? What was their community like? And what caused such a young life to end so early? To this day, scientists have not fully answered these questions. But there is hope that with modern techniques, they will soon uncover the truth behind this mysterious child. 500-year-old mummified woman discovered in South Korea. You know, the world of archaeology is fascinating. Some discoveries don't shock people with gold or treasure, but instead spark curiosity through the most ordinary details. This time, in the city of Osan, about 34 miles south of Seoul, a mummified woman over 500 years old was discovered, along with what may have been the most important item to her in life, a handbag. The discovery took place early last month during the construction of an industrial complex. While working on the site, laborers accidentally uncovered an ancient burial area. Soon after, a team of scholars and researchers from the Joseon Institute of Cultural Heritage was called in to conduct an excavation. Beneath what seemed like lifeless layers of soil and stone, they found a wooden coffin that had been preserved almost perfectly. Inside lay the body of a woman approximately 5 feet 1 inch tall, wrapped in multiple layers of burial cloth, resting as if she had only just been laid to rest. What particularly caught the researchers' attention was not only the exceptional preservation of the mummy, but also a name plaque on the coffin, a small detail with significant meaning. It indicated the official rank of the woman's husband within the government, leading experts to believe that she was likely the wife of a high-ranking official during the Joseon dynasty. Based on her clothing and hairstyle, researchers further determined that she lived around the 16th century, during the early period of the Joseon dynasty, 1392 to 1910, a crucial era in Korean history. When people think of mummies, they often picture ancient Egypt. However, Korea had its own unique method of preserving bodies. Instead of removing internal organs like the Egyptians, people during the Joseon period used tightly sealed coffins coated with lime plaster, creating a near-airtight environment that naturally preserved the body over time. As a result, this woman's mummy not only retains its external form, but also preserves all internal organs, an incredibly valuable resource for scientists studying health conditions and causes of death. Among the burial items, one detail stands out and gives pause: a handbag. While many individuals are buried with jewelry, gold, or luxurious items, for this woman, the handbag seemed to be what she chose to carry into the afterlife. Strange, isn't it? In addition, archaeologists discovered a ceramic jar, a comb, and several hairpins, along with traditional Joseon-era garments that were nearly perfectly preserved. These items not only reflect her social status, but also provide valuable insight into the lifestyle, habits, and culture of noble women of that time. According to excavation team leader Kim Woo-rim, finding such a well-preserved and carefully arranged burial is extremely rare. He noted that this discovery could help scientists better understand life during the early days of the Joseon dynasty. Initial observations suggest that the woman may have died from a chronic illness, based on her thin physique and gaunt facial features. However, more detailed studies are still underway to reach a definitive conclusion. Researcher John Sung-ho from the Joseon Institute also stated that this discovery aligns perfectly with Joseon burial customs and serves as clear evidence of how ancient Koreans treated the deceased. Interestingly, although Korean mummies are not as widely known as Egyptian ones, they offer a unique advantage. Their internal structures remain intact, allowing scientists to conduct in-depth analyses that are not possible elsewhere. So, the story of this 500-year-old woman is more than just an archaeological discovery. It is like a slice of history, where every object, every small detail, is quietly trying to tell the story of a life that once existed. And that truly is no exaggeration. An 18-week-old fetal mummy in England that kept scientists awake at night. When we hear the word mummy, we usually think of powerful pharaohs or famous royal figures. But did you know there is a very special case, so small it could fit in the palm of your hand, that has puzzled scientists for years? It is considered the youngest mummy in the world, currently housed at the Fitzwilliam Museum. Its story began long before that, when archaeologists were excavating at Giza, a land famous for its pyramids and ancient tombs. It was there that they discovered a tiny coffin, which was later transported to England and donated to the museum in 1907. The coffin is only about 17.3 inches long and made of cedar wood. What's remarkable is that it is far from crude. In fact, it is a perfect miniature version of coffins used during the late period of ancient Egypt, around 664 to 525 BC. Despite thousands of years having passed, the outer surface still bears intricate carvings, suggesting that the individual inside was not an ordinary case. Just imagine a coffin that small yet crafted with such care. Who could possibly be inside? Surely someone of great importance, right? However, when scientists conducted deeper studies using X-rays and CT scans, the truth was astonishing. Inside was not an adult, nor even a child in the usual sense, but a fetus. Yes, a life that had not yet been born. Analysis showed that the fetus's skull was still soft, completely consistent with an early stage of development. However, the fingers and toes were already clearly formed, and the arms were positioned neatly across the chest, following the ritual posture commonly used in ancient Egyptian mummification practices. Based on bone measurements, scientists determined that the fetus was approximately 18 weeks old. To this day, it is considered the youngest mummy ever discovered in human history. What truly raises questions is how the body was treated. After being wrapped in multiple layers of thick linen, molten black resin was poured into the coffin, filling all empty spaces before it was sealed shut. This was not a simple process. It was deliberate, calculated, and ritualistic. So the question is, why would a fetus be mummified with such care? Researchers believe it is very possible that the mother suffered a miscarriage and the family chose to carry out a full burial ritual for the unborn child. In ancient Egyptian belief, death was not the end, but a transition to another world. And to enter that world, every soul needed to be acknowledged and respected. Of course, researchers say this because this is not the only case. Previously, in the tomb of Tutankhamun, archaeologists also discovered two other fetal mummies, estimated to be about 25 and 37 weeks old. These cases reinforce one powerful idea. The ancient Egyptians did not measure the value of life by age. Whether a king or an unborn child, all were treated with the same dignity and reverence. At present, the exact cause that prevented this 18-week-old fetus from developing further remains unknown. But what truly troubles scientists is not just the death, it is how people of that time faced loss. A tiny coffin, a complete ritual, meticulous care in every detail, all for a life that never even had the chance to cry. What does that tell us? To me, among the thousands of mummies discovered around the world, this may be the smallest, but it carries one of the greatest messages. No matter the era, humans have always found ways to hold on to what they love, even when it existed for only the briefest moment. Greek mummy in a lead coffin reveals a little-known mummification practice. Amid the familiar stories of Egyptian mummies, there is a lesser-known discovery that has prompted scientists to rethink history itself. The finding of a mummified woman from ancient Greece, preserved in a way few would have expected, deep beneath the ground in Thessaloniki. The story began in 1962, when archaeologists were excavating an ancient cemetery on the eastern outskirts of the city, an area used for burial rituals from the Hellenistic to the Byzantine periods. During the dig, they uncovered a unique structure, a stone coffin. But even more unusual was what lay inside it, a second coffin made of lead. At that moment, it was clear this was no ordinary grave. And indeed, when the lead coffin was opened for the first time, a remarkably well-preserved body was revealed. It belonged to a middle-aged woman, dating to around 300 AD during the period when the Roman Empire ruled over Greek lands. According to the research team, led by Frank Rulli from the University of Zurich, the body was not preserved by environmental conditions alone. It showed clear signs of deliberate mummification. Through a series of modern analyses, including electron microscopy, mass spectrometry, and chromatography, scientists discovered that the body had been treated with aromatic resins, oils, and various spices. These substances helped preserve portions of soft tissue, something extremely rare in mummies outside of Egypt. Notably, although the body had dried and become fragile over time, identifiable features such as eyelashes, hair, arm muscles, and even blood cells were still present. Small details like these serve as a living archive, helping scientists better understand ancient humans. The body was also wrapped in purple silk embroidered with gold thread, an extremely expensive material at the time. This suggests that the woman was not an ordinary individual, but likely belonged to the aristocracy or held a high social status. Skeletal analysis indicates that she was between 50 and 60 years old, a relatively advanced age for ancient times. Her body was placed on a wooden platform inside the lead coffin, wrapped in wool and cotton. She measured about 5 feet in height and had a relatively broad build. Everything points to a carefully prepared journey into the afterlife. Another detail that has drawn particular attention is the lead coffin itself. While it cannot be definitively confirmed, Many researchers believe the lead casing may have created a sealed environment that slowed decomposition. However, whether the use of lead was intentional or merely coincidental remains an open question. According to researcher Christina Papagiorgopoulou, also from the University of Zurich, there had previously been almost no direct evidence that ancient Greeks actually used substances like resins or oils for mummification. Such practices were only mentioned in historical writings by figures like Homer and Herodotus. This discovery, therefore, stands as the first tangible proof that mummification was not exclusive to Egypt. It also existed, albeit rarely, in the Greco-Roman world. Historically, there have been special cases, such as Alexander the Great, who was believed to have been preserved with beeswax after his death. However, such accounts were largely anecdotal and had never been clearly confirmed through archaeology, until this mummy came to light. Today, the woman's remains are preserved at the Archaeological Museum of Thessaloniki, where they have become one of the key subjects in the Swiss Mummy Project, a research initiative focused on understanding life, death, and the transformation of the human body after death using non-invasive methods. As you can see, this story is more than just an archaeological discovery. It opens an entirely new perspective. That in the ancient world, whether in Egypt or Greece, people shared a common desire to preserve a part of their existence beyond time. To us today, this might seem almost unbelievable, but to them, it was something far more profound. The heartless skeletons of a married couple reveal a terrifying Renaissance ritual in France. Did you know that during medieval and Renaissance Europe, there were burial rituals so bizarre that even modern scientists were shocked when they uncovered them? And in France, one such story came to light. An archaeological excavation revealed the mysterious tale of a wealthy married couple who died hundreds of years ago. But the most horrifying detail was that both skeletons were missing their hearts. The story began when researchers from the University of Toulouse conducted excavations of ancient tombs connected to Renaissance-era nobility. During their investigation, they discovered the remains of Toussaint de Perrien and his wife, Louise de Kengo, two individuals buried about 7 years apart and laid to rest in locations nearly 125 miles away from each other. According to historical records, Toussaint de Perrien was a patron of religious orders in the city of Rennes, located in the Brittany region of France. He died on August 30th, 1649, inside the very monastery to which he had devoted much of his life. 7 years later, in 1656, his wife Louise de Kengo passed away at the age of 65. But what astonished archaeologists was not their social status. It was what they found inside the coffins. When Louise's tomb was opened, scientists noticed that she had been buried in remarkably elegant clothing. She wore a black coat and a veil similar to those worn by Catholic nuns of that era, suggesting she was a woman of deep religious faith. However, inside the coffin was something far stranger. Next to her body sat a heart-shaped metal box. According to the inscription engraved on its surface, the container held the heart of her husband, Toussaint de Perrien. Just hearing that is enough to send chills down your spine. It meant that after his death, the husband's heart had been removed from his body and placed inside his wife's coffin. But the story did not end there. When experts examined Louise's remains, they discovered a large cross-shaped incision across her chest. The mark indicated that her heart had also been surgically removed after death. Strangely, Louise's heart was completely missing, and to this day, no one knows where it ended up. Based on this evidence, researchers proposed a shocking theory. They believe that among wealthy French nobles during the Renaissance, there may have existed a special ritual known as a heart exchange. According to this ritual, after a husband and wife died, the wife's heart would be placed in the husband's coffin, while the husband's heart would rest inside the wife's tomb. The ritual is believed to have appeared around the year 1495, yet it was almost never clearly documented in history until this archaeological discovery was published in the journal PLOS I. Researchers believe the ritual carried both deep religious and emotional meaning. People of that time believed that exchanging hearts would allow married couples to remain together forever and reunite in the afterlife. It may sound romantic at first, but when you imagine human hearts being removed from bodies and placed inside someone else's coffin, it becomes impossible not to feel disturbed. And I think you probably feel the same way. Even more unsettling, while investigating the monastery where Toussaint died, researchers discovered 3 additional heart-shaped metal containers crafted in the years 1626, 1684, and 1685. This suggests that the strange ritual may once have been fairly common among wealthy Catholic nobles in Renaissance France. According to scientists, these heart containers were placed inside monasteries so relatives could visit and pray for the souls of the deceased. At the time, many French Catholics believed that without regular prayers, the souls of the dead could suffer torment in hell. Because of this, the heart, considered the center of a person's soul and emotions, became the most sacred object in post-death rituals. Nearly 400 years ago, inside the ancient monasteries of France, wealthy nobles may have carried out heart exchange ceremonies in the hope of remaining united forever, even after death. Was it love, religious devotion, or a deeply unsettling spiritual ritual? Even today, history still cannot provide a completely clear answer. But this discovery proves that people of the past practiced burial rituals so strange and haunting that they go far beyond anything most of us could imagine today. 6,000-year-old mass grave in France reveals the horrifying secret of a hand-chopping ritual that shocked researchers. Around 6,000 years ago, in what is now a peaceful region of France, a horrifying event took place. One so disturbing that if it appeared in a movie today, many people would assume it was fictional. That terrifying scene was reconstructed from an ancient burial pit discovered in the city of Bergheim in eastern France. There, archaeologist Fanny Chanal and her team from the Antilla Archaeological Institute uncovered 7 human skeletons piled on top of one another, including 2 men, 1 woman, and 4 children. In addition to the bodies, they also found the skull of an infant along with crushed fragments of hand bones shattered into tiny pieces. But the detail that truly sent chills through everyone was the mysterious severed left arms found at the bottom of the pit. Researchers believe these individuals may have been killed during an attack or a violent conflict that took place during the Neolithic period. After their deaths, their bodies were thrown into this massive circular pit. However, the real mystery lies in what was already there before the corpses were placed inside. At the bottom of the pit were several left arms that had been cleanly severed using axes or other sharp weapons. To this day, no one knows exactly who those arms belonged to. Archaeologists also reported that one of the male skeletons showed signs of a devastating skull injury, suggesting he may have been beaten to death with a heavy object. That same skeleton was also missing its left arm. Even so, researchers have not yet been able to determine whether the missing arm is among the pile of bones found in the pit. What makes the discovery even more disturbing is that the scattered hand bones found at the bottom suggest the hands attached to those severed arms had been deliberately smashed apart. Hearing this, many people naturally ask the same question. Why did the attackers specifically target the left arms? Was it a wartime ritual, a form of revenge, or some kind of human sacrifice ceremony? According to Fanny Chanal and her team, the severed left arms may have been treated as trophies taken after battle. In other words, this site could represent evidence of a brutal conflict between Neolithic communities. After the fighting ended, the victors may have cut off their enemies' arms as a display of power or as part of a victory ritual. Of course, this remains only a theory, but if it is correct, it suggests that prehistoric humans may have been far more violent and ruthless than we once imagined. Radiocarbon analysis revealed that the skeletons date back approximately 6,000 years to the Neolithic era, the period when humans first began forming early agricultural communities. During that time, the dead were commonly buried in large circular pits dug into the ground. However, until now, scientists had never fully understood the true purpose of these pits, and the discovery at Bergheim completely changed that understanding. According to Chanal, this is the first time in archaeological history that researchers have found clear evidence showing that Neolithic circular pits were used to bury victims of violence and armed conflict. In other words, people living 6,000 years ago did not merely farm and build communities. They also fought wars, killed one another, and may have practiced terrifying rituals after battle. What makes the story even more fascinating is that about 3 years before this pit was discovered, archaeologists had already excavated 60 other circular pits in Bergheim. Among them, 13 pits contained human remains or scattered human bones. This suggests the area may once have been the site of repeated conflicts or mysterious rituals spanning multiple generations. Alongside the human remains, scientists also uncovered numerous ancient artifacts, including shell jewelry, a stone spearhead, pig jawbones, and even 2 hair skeletons. These objects may have been connected to burial ceremonies, sacrificial rituals, or traces of everyday life within the ancient community. And because of these discoveries, many researchers now believe this land may once have been the setting for massacres, wars, or bloody rituals that were never recorded in human history. Truly terrifying to think about, isn't it? The remains of a 13-ton giant superbeast. Hunted by ancient humans, a terrifying mystery in Israel. An elephant tusk measuring more than 8 feet long, nearly the length of a small car, belonging to an ancient creature that weighed as much as 13 tons and stood nearly 13 feet tall, once roamed across the Near East 500,000 years ago. And what makes this even more chilling is the possibility that this massive beast may have been hunted and killed by an ancient human species. Sounds like something straight out of a prehistoric movie, doesn't it? But this is actually a real discovery recently announced by archaeologists in Israel. Several years ago, during excavations in the Near East region of Israel, a research team from the Israel Antiquities Authority, also known as the IAA, together with researchers from Tel Aviv University, uncovered an extremely rare fossil belonging to the extinct straight-tusked elephant, a gigantic species that disappeared around 400,000 years ago. However, the newly excavated specimen was determined to be approximately 500,000 years old and is considered the largest complete fossilized tusk ever discovered in Israel and throughout the Near East. When most people hear the word elephant, they immediately picture today's massive African elephants. But believe me, compared to this ancient creature, even modern African elephants would have looked small. Scientists say the straight-tusked elephant could grow up to about 13 feet tall and weigh around 13 tons, roughly twice the weight of the largest modern African elephants. Its tusks alone could reach lengths of more than 8 feet, enough to make anyone standing nearby feel tiny beside what looked like a prehistoric tank. What makes this even more fascinating is that these enormous creatures once lived in the region of Israel as far back as 800,000 years ago. They dominated the land for hundreds of thousands of years before suddenly vanishing from Earth around 400,000 years ago, leaving behind countless unanswered mysteries. And the tusk that was just discovered may be one of the key clues that could help modern scientists better understand this mysterious extinction. But the story does not end with the fossil discovery itself. During the excavation, archaeologists also uncovered additional bones, including part of a skull, ribs, and teeth belonging to the animal. Even more importantly, lying beside those remains were numerous man-made tools, including stone axes and ancient cutting instruments. According to Dr. Ionir Malevsky from the Israel Antiquities Authority, this detail led researchers to propose a shocking theory. This gigantic creature may have actually been hunted by ancient humans. And that is where the truly terrifying mystery begins. You see, 500,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, modern humans like us, did not yet exist on Earth. That means the beings that confronted this 13-ton monster must have belonged to another ancient human species. They had no guns, no metal weapons, and no modern machines. The only things they possessed were stone axes, primitive spears, and collective teamwork. Yet somehow, they were still capable of hunting one of the most terrifying creatures of prehistoric times. Just imagine that scene for a moment. A group of primitive humans standing in an ancient wilderness, facing a creature nearly as tall as a 2-story house. One stomp of its foot or a single swing of its tusk could easily crush anything in its path. And yet they still dared to hunt it. That thought alone is enough to make this discovery astonishing, isn't it? Right now, the massive tusk is being preserved with extreme care by paleontologists. After lying underground for hundreds of thousands of years, the fossil could rapidly deteriorate once exposed again to air and sunlight. Experts have even compared it to evaporating into the sky if it is not handled properly. And perhaps the most intriguing part is that the excavation site has not yet been fully explored. Researchers believe that beneath those ancient layers of earth, there may still be more hidden evidence of gigantic prehistoric hunts, places where ancient humans once directly confronted the superbeasts that ruled the earth. A tusk more than 8 feet long, a creature weighing 13 tons, and possible evidence of human hunting from 500,000 years ago. All of this makes the discovery in Israel far more than an ordinary archaeological excavation. It feels more like a doorway that is suddenly opened, allowing us to glimpse a brutal prehistoric world that vanished from human history long ago. What do you think? Do you see this discovery the same way? Or do you have a different theory about it? If so, don't hesitate to leave a comment below and share your thoughts with everyone. 97 skeletons. Inside a house of death in China. Reveal a terrifying prehistoric pandemic from 5,000 years ago. At the ancient Maeshowe site, one of the best preserved prehistoric settlements ever discovered in China, archaeologists uncovered a small house measuring only about 215 square feet. But you know what truly left everyone speechless? It wasn't the house itself, but what was packed inside it. There were 97 human skeletons. From children and teenagers to the elderly, all of them were crammed together inside the tiny space, as if they had been forced into the house at the same time. Through dating analysis, experts determined that these people were ancient residents who once lived in the prehistoric village of Maeshowe in northern China. What's even more shocking is that there was no evidence of a major battle or outside attack. Instead, every clue pointed towards something far more terrifying: an ancient epidemic. According to archaeologists, a deadly infectious disease, possibly similar to an early form of plague, may have suddenly spread throughout the community. The outbreak caused deaths to rise so rapidly that the villagers no longer had enough time to bury each person individually as they normally would. In desperation, they were forced to place all of the bodies inside the small house in the middle of the village in an attempt to prevent the disease from spreading further. And the way the skeletons were positioned inside the house tells the story of that horrifying moment. On the northern side of the house, many of the skeletons remained relatively intact, suggesting that the first bodies may have been laid down carefully. But farther toward the south, everything became chaotic. Skulls, arm bones, and leg bones were piled on top of one another in layers, as if the deaths had happened so quickly that the living no longer had the strength to organize or properly bury the dead. Even more disturbing, researchers discovered blackened burn marks and collapsed wooden beams in one corner of the house. They believe that after the house became filled with bodies, a fire may have broken out. Burning support beams collapsed onto the skeletons, crushing and disturbing many of the remains for thousands of years afterward. However, what makes this discovery truly significant is not just the number of skeletons, but what it reveals about prehistoric human life. Throughout the entire Maeshowe site, archaeologists also uncovered farming tools, pottery, and hunting weapons. These findings show that this was once a fairly stable and developed community. They knew how to farm, hunt, and build a long-term life in the freezing lands of the north. But then, after the appearance of a mysterious epidemic, nearly everything disappeared. The most chilling part is that even though these people lived 5,000 years ago, they still faced fears that feel painfully familiar today: disease, isolation, and the helplessness of watching death spread from one family to another. And perhaps that is why the small house at Maeshowe is more than just an archaeological site. It feels like a terrifying snapshot of human history, a place that still preserves the final moments of an entire ancient community wiped out by a deadly epidemic. You see, disease really is terrifying, isn't it? 47-million-year-old fossil. Discovered in Germany, may rewrite the origins of humanity. For hundreds of years, humanity has searched for the answer to one of the greatest questions in evolutionary history. Where did we truly come from? And scientists were no exception. That is why they spent countless years researching and searching for the answer to that mystery. Finally, after a long time, they found a clue. Deep inside an ancient volcanic crater at the Maeshowe pit site in Germany, researchers discovered a strange 47-million-year-old fossil, so extraordinary that they believed it could be the missing link between humans and ancient primates. The fossil was named Darwinius massillae, but the world came to know it simply as Ida. What made Ida one of the most shocking discoveries in paleontology was not only its incredible age of 47 million years, but also the almost unbelievable level of preservation of the fossil itself. Researchers confirmed that Ida was preserved up to 95%, making it far more complete than most primate fossils ever discovered before. To put that into perspective, most ancient fossils found by scientists are usually just a few teeth, fragments of bone, or incomplete skulls. But with Ida, nearly the entire body remained visible after lying buried deep underground for tens of millions of years. The fossil was actually discovered back in 1983 at Maeshowe Pit, a site located in the German state of Hesse. The area was once the crater of an ancient volcano measuring about 1 mile wide and is famous for its unique oil shale deposits, which preserve fossils from the Eocene epoch in extraordinary detail. However, Ida's journey was almost as mysterious as the skeleton itself. After being excavated, fossil hunters split the specimen into 2 separate parts and sold them off individually. A smaller section was altered and partially reconstructed to appear more complete before eventually ending up in a private museum in Wyoming, United States. Years later, researcher Jens L. Franzen discovered unusual signs of restoration on that portion of the fossil. Meanwhile, the more complete section eventually became part of the collection at the Natural History Museum of the University of Oslo. It was there that an international team of scientists, led by Dr. Jorn Hurum from the University of Oslo, secretly studied Ida for 2 straight years in an effort to uncover the true origins of this remarkable creature. The research findings were later published in the scientific journal PLOS One and quickly shocked the world. Scientists determined that Ida was a young female primate that died at around 9 months old. Her body measured about 3 feet long, or nearly 1 meter. What amazed researchers most was that Ida possessed characteristics positioned somewhere between primitive primates and the evolutionary line that eventually led to modern humans. Simply put, she seemed to stand somewhere in the middle of the evolutionary tree. Ida had opposable thumbs like humans, allowing for precise gripping while climbing and picking fruit. Her forward-facing eyes created 3D vision for judging distance, a key trait found in modern primates. Ida's nails also resembled human fingernails rather than the claws seen in lemurs. Even more importantly, Ida lacked both the tooth comb and the grooming claw, 2 defining features commonly found in ancient lemurs. Instead, her dental structure was more similar to monkeys and apes. Another detail that captured enormous scientific attention was the talus bone in her foot. This bone structure closely resembled the talus bone found in modern humans. Because of this, experts believed it could serve as important evidence linking Ida to the evolutionary branch that eventually led to humanity. Professor Philip Gingerich from the University of Michigan even described Ida as the Rosetta Stone of paleontology, suggesting that she could be the key to decoding the evolutionary origins of primates. But perhaps the most haunting part of Ida's story is the way she died. CT scans and X-rays revealed that Ida's left wrist had once been severely fractured and was still healing. Scientists believe that while approaching Lake Messel for water, Ida may have been overcome by carbon dioxide released from volcanic activity. Because her wrist was injured, she could not escape. Her small body eventually sank to the bottom of the ancient lake, and it was the unique environment beneath that lake that preserved Ida's skeleton in astonishing condition for 47 million years. Remarkably, traces of food were still found inside the fossilized remains of her stomach. Researchers discovered that Ida mainly ate fruit, leaves, and seeds before her death. When the research was officially announced in 2009, renowned broadcaster and naturalist David Attenborough made a statement that captured the world's attention. "This creature is going to show us our connection with all the rest of the mammals. The link they said was missing is no longer missing." And even today, Ida remains one of the most important fossils ever discovered, not only because of her astonishing age of 47 million years, but because she may hold the answer to the very origins of humanity itself. Isn't that fascinating? The $500 million treasure hidden beneath a Chinese river, the 300-year-old secret of the Ming dynasty's bandit king. For hundreds of years, people in Sichuan province, China, have passed down stories about a massive treasure that mysteriously disappeared beneath the Min River, a 457-mile-long river flowing through central Sichuan and one of China's most important inland waterways. According to legend, thousands of gold and silver bars, along with priceless jewels, sank together with an entire fleet of ships during a bloody battle at the end of the Ming dynasty. Of course, many people believed it was nothing more than folklore until archaeologists actually uncovered what was hidden beneath the riverbed, and what they discovered far exceeded every rumor. On March 20th, 2017, Chinese archaeologists officially announced one of the most shocking excavations in the country's history. Near the mouth of the Min River, close to Jiangku Town in Pengshan County, Sichuan Province in southwestern China, archaeologists uncovered more than 10,000 gold, silver, and bronze artifacts dating back over 300 years. What made the discovery even more astonishing was that the entire treasure hoard had been buried nearly 16 feet beneath the riverbed. The excavation site was located about 31 miles south of Chengdu, the capital city of Sichuan province. But unlike ordinary land excavations, this mission presented a challenge almost unheard of in Chinese archaeology. The river current was far too powerful, so in order to reach the treasure, researchers had to construct a massive cofferdam covering nearly 215,000 square feet to block the water flow. After the barrier was completed, 20 high-powered pumps worked continuously for 4 straight months just to drain the excavation area. The preparation effort alone showed that something incredibly important might be hidden beneath the river. And that suspicion proved correct. As layers of deep mud were removed, countless valuable artifacts gradually emerged before the eyes of archaeologists. Ancient coins, gold and silver jewelry, and iron weapons such as swords, spears, and battle knives had remained buried in sand and mud beneath the river for more than 3 centuries. According to Gao Delun, director of the Archaeological Research and Cultural Heritage Institute, the total value of the recovered artifacts was estimated at around $500 million. Among the thousands of relics, one object in particular stunned archaeologists the most: a pure gold seal weighing nearly 18 pounds and made from approximately 95% solid gold. The seal measured about 4 by 4 inches, and its handle was crafted in the shape of an exquisitely detailed turtle. Inscribed on its surface were the words, "Treasure of the King of Shu." Even though the artifact had broken into 4 pieces, experts were still amazed by the extraordinary craftsmanship. The raised carvings and intricate details revealed the incredible skill of ancient artisans. Yet the greatest mystery was connected to what appeared at first to be nothing more than a worthless piece of wood. During the excavation, scientists discovered a hollowed-out wooden log about 3 feet long, buried roughly 8 feet deep beneath the mud. Inside the log were 10 ancient silver ingots. The silver bars were engraved with the inscription, "10th year of the Chongzhen reign, 50 taels of silver, silversmith Zhang Guo King." According to Wu Tianwen, director of the Pengshan Cultural Relics Management Office, the object was actually a qinggang staff, a famous treasure-hiding device recorded in Chinese history. Historical records state that the qinggang staff was a special tool used by Zhang Xianzhong, the notorious rebel leader of the late Ming dynasty. He ordered wooden logs to be hollowed out, sealed with iron at both ends, and filled with silver so that treasure could be transported and hidden in secret. And once the name Zhang Xianzhong entered the story, the mystery behind the treasure suddenly became much clearer. According to historical accounts, in 1644, Zhang Xianzhong led his forces into Sichuan, slaughtering wealthy merchants and seizing enormous fortunes from them. The amount of gold and silver he accumulated was said to be so vast that legend claimed there were 24 rooms filled entirely with gold and silver bars. It was even said that he once hosted a massive treasure competition in Chengdu simply to display his immense wealth. But in 1646, as his fleet transported the treasure through the Laohu Shoal area near Jiangku town, Ming dynasty forces launched a surprise attack. The violent battle caused most of the ships to sink to the bottom of the river, along with all the gold, silver, and jewels aboard them. From that moment on, Zhang Xianzhong's treasure became a legend that survived for more than 300 years. And now, after centuries resting silently beneath the waters of the Min River in Sichuan province, part of that secret has finally been brought back into the light. Ancient tomb, containing the nearly perfectly preserved body and official robes of China's Baozheng of the Ming dynasty. For nearly 600 years, no one knew that beneath a road in Taikang County, Henan Province, China, a Ming dynasty official had been resting silently in the darkness of history. Then one day, during the construction of a water pipeline, the sound of excavators echoed across the site when the ancient ground suddenly collapsed, revealing traces of an old tomb that had never been recorded in modern historical documents. At first, workers thought they had simply uncovered an old foundation or ordinary layers of bricks and stone. But as they dug deeper, ancient bricks, stone tablets, and the structure of a burial chamber gradually appeared, making everyone realize that this place had been buried by time for centuries. Authorities and archaeologists were immediately called to the scene, and when the tomb was finally opened, everyone was stunned by what they saw inside. An ancient body along with Ming dynasty official robes that had remained almost perfectly preserved for hundreds of years. According to inscriptions carved on the tombstone, the owner of the tomb was Gu Pu, a famous incorruptible official of China's Ming dynasty. He once held the position of right censor-in-chief, an important government role responsible for supervising and criticizing the imperial court when necessary. What made him especially remarkable was that, in Chinese history, Gu Pu was often compared to Bao Zheng because of his rare honesty and integrity. People of that era recalled that during court meetings, unless absolutely necessary, Gu Pu rarely sat together with other officials. He always chose a separate seat for himself, keeping his distance from flattery and political factions within the imperial court. Because of this habit, he was even given a unique nickname, Gu the Lone Sitter, meaning the official who always sat alone. Perhaps it was precisely because of his quiet and honorable life that this discovery fascinated so many people. After nearly 600 years, the body of this Ming dynasty official was still lying inside the tomb together with official robes that had largely retained their original form. For archaeologists, this is extraordinarily rare. Normally, bodies buried for long periods quickly decompose due to humidity, bacteria, and changes in the surrounding soil environment. Fabric clothing also almost never survives intact after centuries underground. Yet inside the tomb in Taikang County, many details of the official robes were still clearly recognizable. This suggests that the tomb may have been built with a highly specialized structure designed to prevent air and moisture from entering for hundreds of years. As soon as the news was released, the discovery quickly attracted attention across China, not only because of the astonishing preservation of the body, but also because of the identity of the man buried there. Gu Pu was born in 1376 and died in 1446 during the early Ming dynasty. This was a period when the Chinese imperial court placed great emphasis on bureaucracy and legal administration. At a time when many officials were accused of corruption or factionalism, someone as famously honest as Gu Pu naturally became deeply respected by the people. Authorities in Taikang County later confirmed that the site was indeed the ancient tomb of a Ming dynasty official from the Gu family. Interestingly, even today, many descendants of the Gu family still live in Taikang County. Because of that, many local residents felt as though the history of their ancestors had suddenly awakened once again from beneath the earth. And from there, many questions began to emerge. Why was Gu Pu's body preserved so well? Were there still other secrets hidden inside the tomb? And could the accompanying artifacts and documents help historians better understand political life during the Ming dynasty? Even now, the ancient tomb in Taikang County continues to be studied. But perhaps what moves people the most is not the material value or the scale of the burial site. Instead, it is the feeling that a historical figure who lived nearly 600 years ago has somehow been brought back into the modern world. In the endless flow of time, some names slowly fade from history. But sometimes, all it takes is a single accidental excavation beneath the earth for an ancient story to come alive once again. Isn't archaeology incredible? The 2,000-year-old lost medical remedy hidden inside an ancient book. You know, some of humanity's greatest secrets are not hidden inside pyramids, tombs, or treasure vaults filled with gold and silver. Sometimes, they are simply buried within old books covered in the dust of time. And occasionally, all it takes is a quick glance at faded symbols on ancient parchment for an entire medical tradition lost for nearly 2,000 years to suddenly come back to life. A perfect example of this is the story of Dr. Grigory Kessel, a researcher specializing in ancient Syriac manuscripts at the Philipps University of Marburg. One day, while examining a rare ancient book in the library of a wealthy private collector in Baltimore, he noticed something unusual. At first glance, the manuscript looked like nothing more than an old religious text, similar to thousands of other ancient documents. But then Kessel suddenly realized that the drawings and handwriting looked strangely familiar. He remembered that just 3 weeks earlier, at the library of Harvard University, he had seen a page containing nearly identical symbols. That moment sparked a search that would span multiple countries, some of the oldest libraries in the world, and ultimately reveal a medical secret hidden for centuries. After returning to Harvard to investigate, Kessel began comparing page sizes, ink marks, handwriting styles, and even the faint traces hidden beneath the scraped sheet parchment. Eventually, he confirmed that the page at Harvard had originally belonged to the very same ancient manuscript now located in Baltimore. But there was a problem. The book was still missing several pages. From that point on, Dr. Kessel began an obsessive search through 10 major libraries around the world, known for preserving ancient Syriac texts. At times, he carefully examined online manuscript archives page by page. Other times, he traveled directly to the libraries himself in search of the missing fragments. Little by little, the lost pieces began to reappear. One page was discovered at a Christian monastery on Mount Sinai, home to one of the oldest libraries on Earth. Another page was found in the National Library of France. Yet another fragment surfaced within the Vatican Library. Even so, 3 mysterious pages remain missing to this day. But do you know what truly shocked scholars? It wasn't just the strange journey of the manuscript itself, it was what was hidden beneath the visible text. It turned out that the ancient book was made from scraped sheep parchment, a recycled writing material commonly used during the Middle Ages. In the 11th century, Syriac monks had scraped away the older text so they could write religious hymns over the top. However, even though the original writing had been erased, modern spectral imaging technology was still able to detect the faint hidden characters underneath. And what researchers uncovered stunned the academic world. Beneath the religious writings was an ancient Syriac medical text translated from the works of Galen, the famous Greek doctor and philosopher who lived nearly 2,000 years ago. The text turned out to be part of Simple Drugs, Methods of Preparation and Effects, a medical work once considered essential reading for physicians throughout the ancient world for centuries. According to experts, the manuscript contains numerous records about medicinal plants and ancient healing methods. Galen described roots used to treat throat illnesses and even recommended hemp as a remedy for ear pain that supposedly did not cause bloating. Today, those ideas may sound strange, but at the time, they represented some of the most advanced medical knowledge in existence. What makes the discovery even more important is that this Syriac manuscript may have been one of the earliest translations created during the 6th century, when Middle Eastern Christian communities translated Greek texts into Syriac. According to Dr. Kessel, translating highly complex medical terminology into a completely different language during ancient times was an extraordinary achievement. The translators essentially had to invent entirely new systems of medical vocabulary. These Syriac translations later became the bridge that carried Greek medical knowledge into the Islamic world and across the ancient Middle East. The Baltimore manuscript itself had actually been sold to a private collector back in 2002. Then, in 2009, it was loaned to the Walters Art Museum for research. There, a team of specialists used ultra-high-resolution digital cameras and spectral imaging technology to photograph every page, revealing the erased writing hidden beneath the parchment for hundreds of years. And thanks to modern technology, part of a medical tradition lost for nearly 2 millennia has finally begun to return to the light. Although many of Galen's theories are now considered incorrect, such as the belief that the human body was controlled by 4 bodily humors: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. During his lifetime, those ideas formed the foundation of ancient medicine. And perhaps what makes this discovery truly special is not whether those remedies are still useful today, but the fact that they help humanity understand how ancient people fought disease using every piece of knowledge they had. Medieval mummy, wrapped in tree bark, shocks the archaeological world. In the freezing lands of northern Russia, where snow and ice cover the ground year-round, there lies an ancient cemetery that had been almost forgotten by the world for centuries. There were no pyramids, no giant tombs, and no massive stone statues. Yet this very place concealed one of the strangest archaeological mysteries of the medieval era. A body wrapped tightly in layers of birch bark had remained buried deep beneath the permafrost for hundreds of years. This remarkable discovery was uncovered by archaeologists near the village of Salakard at a medieval burial ground known as Zeliny Yar. According to researchers, the mysterious remains may belong to a child or teenager who lived sometime during the 12th or 13th century. But what truly shocked experts was not the age of the remains. It was the way the body had been buried. You see, when archaeologists excavated the frozen ground beneath the cemetery, they discovered a strange cocoon, measuring about 4.3 feet long and roughly 12 inches wide. The entire exterior was covered in birch bark, while inside, a thin layer of copper wrapped tightly around the body itself. This type of burial had almost never been seen anywhere else in the region. According to specialists, the copper layer created a natural barrier that prevented bacteria and oxygen from reaching the body inside. Combined with Siberia's permanently freezing temperatures, the corpse gradually dried out naturally and may have become mummified over time. In other words, nature itself may have accidentally transformed this site into a giant embalming chamber hidden beneath Russia's permafrost. Alexander Gusev, head of the regional archaeological research team, stated that the body inside had been wrapped with extraordinary care. According to him, if the remains truly are a complete mummy, then the head and skull may still be exceptionally well preserved after hundreds of years. That possibility has made archaeologists extremely excited, because for many years the Zeleny Yar Cemetery has been considered one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in Siberia. Previously, archaeologists had uncovered 34 ancient graves at the site. Among them were 5 mummies covered in copper and wrapped in reindeer, beaver, or wolverine fur, a bizarre burial ritual rarely seen in other cultures. No one knows exactly why ancient people used these materials to wrap the dead. However, some researchers believe the ritual may have been reserved for special members of society at the time. Another theory suggests that the fur and copper carried spiritual significance, helping protect the souls of the deceased on their journey into the afterlife. There was also another fascinating detail. Near the mysterious cocoon, experts discovered several bronze artifacts designed in a style strikingly similar to ancient Persian craftsmanship. This detail has led archaeologists to suspect that the Zeleny Yar region may once have had cultural or trade connections with Persia hundreds of years ago, something almost unimaginable for such a remote and frozen region in northern Russia. However, this same site also became the reason archaeological excavations were completely halted for years. In 2002, after several excavation campaigns, local residents strongly opposed further digging at the ancient cemetery. They believed the area was sacred ancestral ground and that disturbing the graves would disrupt the spirits of the dead. Since then, archaeological activity at the site had nearly stopped entirely, until the discovery of this latest birch bark cocoon. At present, the unusual artifact is being stored inside a specialized refrigeration unit at the Shemenovsky Museum to prevent the remains inside from deteriorating when exposed to warmer outside temperatures. Archaeologists plan to open the cocoon on July 15th to determine whether it truly contains a fully preserved mummy. If confirmed, it would become the first mummy discovered in this region since 2002. 4,100-year-old tomb in China reveals one of the most brutal beheading massacres of the Neolithic era. In northeastern China, in Honghe Village, Heilongjiang Province, a discovery has sent chills through the archaeological community. A 4,100-year-old mass grave, first uncovered in the 1990s. However, it wasn't until multiple excavation campaigns, 6 in total, that the full story began to emerge. And what archaeologists found was far from an ordinary burial site. Instead, it was the haunting evidence of one of the largest known beheading massacres from the Neolithic period in China. According to research published in September, based on skeletal analysis, scientists identified at least 43 individuals at the site. Of these, 32 were most likely killed in a single event, in other words, a mass killing. But what makes this discovery even more chilling is that all the victims were women and children. There was no trace of adult men, no signs of a balanced battle. So it raises a disturbing question. What happened to the men of this village at that time? The evidence preserved in the bones tells a grim story. Many skeletons were found without heads, and notably, the cervical vertebrae showed deep cut marks consistent with sharp force trauma. This confirms that these were not natural deaths or simple ritual practices. It was deliberate, violent execution. Researchers believe the attackers used handheld weapons, possibly sharpened stone tools, to carry out the beheadings in a brutal and decisive manner. Professor Qian Wang of Texas A&M University, the lead author of the study, explains that throughout history and prehistory, beheading was not merely a method of killing, it was also a symbol of power and conflict. Leaders or enemies were often targeted, not just to be eliminated, but to seize their spirit or energy. It may sound like a spiritual ritual, but in reality, it reflects the savage nature of ancient warfare. Although it's impossible to reconstruct every moment of what happened over 4 millennia ago, scientists have proposed a likely scenario. The people of Honghe were probably a community that survived through hunting, fishing, and farming, a way of life that may seem peaceful but often led to conflict when resources were scarce. It's possible they had previously clashed with neighboring tribes, even attacking and beheading rivals in earlier conflicts. And then, retaliation came. While the men of the village were away, perhaps hunting or trading, an enemy group may have quietly approached. They didn't strike immediately. Instead, they waited for the right moment when only women and children remained. Then, the attack began. There was no defense, no resistance. The most vulnerable became the targets. The massacre unfolded quickly, ruthlessly, and with almost no survivors. When the remaining villagers and male members eventually returned, they were met with a scene beyond comprehension. According to Wang, they gathered the bodies, placed them into 2 houses, buried them in a simple manner, and then left. There were no elaborate rituals, no gravestones, just a hurried farewell marked by grief and fear. But the horror doesn't end there. Archaeologists also uncovered a deeply disturbing detail. 4 skulls were found in a separate pit, with no accompanying bodies. This has led many to believe these may have been trophies from previous battles, brought by the attackers to Honghae, perhaps as a display of power or a form of psychological intimidation. Interestingly, similar discoveries have been made near Lake Baikal in eastern Siberia. The tribes there also lived by hunting and fishing, much like the Honghae people, suggesting that patterns of violent conflict may have been widespread across vast regions during that time. Moreover, research published by Cambridge University Press indicates that during the Shang dynasty, 1600 to 1046 BCE, beheading became so prevalent that human heads themselves were considered valuable objects. They were not only seen as symbols of victory, but were also tied to the belief that a headless spirit could not return to seek revenge. As you can see, what begins as an act of violence can gradually evolve into a cultural belief system. History is not just about triumphs and achievements, it is also filled with buried tragedies. And the 4,100-year-old tomb in Honghae, northeastern China, stands as a chilling reminder of humanity's darker side, a darkness that existed long before we even had the words to describe it. Giant stone traps of the ancient people in the Middle Eastern deserts. In the 1920s, pilots from the Royal Air Force, while flying over the vast arid deserts stretching across Israel, Jordan, and Egypt, unexpectedly spotted strange shapes on the ground, structures that looked like enormous kites spread across the desert. At the time, no one knew exactly what they were, but the discovery opened the door to one of the most fascinating archaeological stories about the hunting ingenuity of ancient humans. As researchers continued their investigations, they realized that these desert kites were not limited to a few isolated locations. Instead, they were scattered across a vast region, stretching from the Arabian Peninsula and the Sinai Peninsula all the way to southeastern Turkey. Thousands of these structures have been documented, forming a massive network that, when viewed from above, looks like mysterious markings etched into the ground thousands of years ago. So what exactly are these kites? If you were standing on the ground, you might not notice anything unusual. But from a broader perspective, their structure becomes clear. The tail consists of 2 low stone walls, varying in thickness and height, extending for hundreds of yards, and in some cases, several miles. These walls gradually converge, forming a V-shape or funnel, leading to an endpoint connected to an earthen enclosure or a large circular pit ranging from a few yards to several hundred yards in diameter. By now, you can probably guess their purpose. Yes, archaeological evidence shows that these were enormous hunting traps, among the largest large-scale hunting systems ever created by ancient humans. Instead of hunting animals one by one, people devised a method to drive entire herds into traps, a strategy that was both ingenious and astonishing. The clearest evidence came in 2011, when a team of archaeologists from Israel and the United States excavated a large pit in northeastern Syria. There, they uncovered a significant quantity of bones belonging to the goitered gazelle, dating back to the 4th millennium BCE. This discovery not only confirmed the function of the kites, but also showed that they were used for large-scale hunting after the Neolithic period. Most of these structures were built between 4000 and 2000 BCE, although some are even older, dating back as far as 8000 BCE. This means that humans had already mastered highly organized, large-scale cooperative hunting remarkably early, something not often associated with prehistoric societies. Ancient people did not build these traps randomly. They carefully selected highly strategic locations, flat terrains situated between natural depressions or dry riverbeds, where animals could be easily funneled into a no-escape situation. In some areas, instead of using earthen enclosures, they dug deep pits ranging from about 20 to 50 feet. These pits were designed with gently sloping sides, allowing animals to fall in easily, but making it extremely difficult for them to climb back out. Even this small detail reveals the remarkable level of planning and sophistication involved. But there's more. Many of the stone walls were divided into smaller segments, creating pathways that disoriented the herd and prevented escape. During a hunt, a group of people would work together to drive animals, usually gazelles, along the stone walls. As they ran, the space would narrow, their speed would increase, and eventually they would lose control, rushing straight into the final enclosure, where they either fell into pits or were trapped and killed in large numbers. It may sound simple, but in reality, this was an activity that required coordination among many individuals. After the hunt, they would skin the animals, process the meat, and transport it back to their settlements. This was not just hunting, it was a large-scale food supply system for entire communities. What's striking is that this method of hunting gazelles continued for thousands of years, even into the 19th and early 20th centuries. However, overhunting eventually drove the goitered gazelle, once abundant in the wild, to near extinction. Today, only small populations survive in protected reserves. And yet, when we look back at the full story, these stone kites are more than just archaeological remains. They are evidence of human intelligence, creativity, and the profound impact humans have had on nature for thousands of years. A seemingly simple invention, powerful enough to reshape entire ecosystems. Fascinating, isn't it? The skeleton of a woman with the genes of a man. Just imagine this. What if one day scientists told you that a skeleton buried as a woman for 2,000 years was actually male? Would you believe it? This isn't a hypothesis. It's a real discovery, made in London. But what makes this case truly remarkable isn't just the DNA result. It's the mysterious life of this individual, someone who lived in an ancient society that even today we may not fully understand. It all began in 1979, when archaeologists excavated a skeleton on Harper Road in London. At first, there was no reason for doubt. From the pelvis to the skull, everything indicated that the remains belonged to a woman until modern DNA technology stepped in. Years later, a research team from the British Museum, along with other scientific institutions, began analyzing the DNA of several ancient skeletons. Out of more than 20,000 remains in storage, they selected 4 representative samples to study the population makeup of Roman-era London in greater depth. And then came a shocking discovery. This skeleton, long believed to be female, actually carried male chromosomes. According to scientists, cases like this are extremely rare, occurring in only a small number of births out of every 1,000, when a biological male may develop traits similar to a female, or vice versa. This individual appears to be one of those rare cases, dating back more than 2 millennia. Analysis suggests that this person lived between approximately 50 and 70 BCE and died at the age of about 26 to 35. A relatively young age. Chemical testing of the teeth revealed that she was born in Britain, while her maternal ancestry traced back to Northern Europe. This indicates that even in ancient times, London was already a place of significant cultural exchange. And indeed, research shows that Roman London was just as diverse as many modern cities. People of European descent made up only about 45% of the population, and more than 100 different languages were spoken across its neighborhoods. Think about that. An ancient city that multicultural is truly astonishing. Returning to the individual herself, scientists have even reconstructed aspects of her appearance. She likely had brown eyes and dark brown hair, a fairly typical look. But what makes her story truly extraordinary is not just her genetics but how she was buried. She was placed in a wooden coffin, a burial method that was far from simple. At her feet lay a necklace, possibly used to signify her identity as female. In addition, there was a vessel placed near her head and a bronze mirror positioned by her feet. These items were not random. They suggest that she held a relatively high status in society and was treated with respect. From a morphological standpoint, all the evidence indicates that she was female. However, DNA analysis revealed that she carried both X and Y chromosomes, meaning that genetically, she was male. And this is where the mystery deepens. Scientists have proposed a hypothesis involving a condition known as androgen insensitivity syndrome. a disorder in which a person with male chromosomes develops external characteristics typical of a female. However, the available data is not sufficient to confirm this as the definitive explanation. This raises a profound question. How did this individual truly live in that society? As a man? As a woman? Or as something that even today we are still trying to define? Unfortunately, those questions remain unanswered. But here's something worth thinking about. Even without direct evidence of her behavior or social role, the burial artifacts speak volumes. She was not rejected. On the contrary, she appears to have been accepted, perhaps even respected, by her community. And that suggests something powerful. Even in ancient times, people may have held far more complex and humane perspectives than we often assume. The skeleton of a medieval girl, burned for suspected witchcraft. There's something deeply unsettling about this in the Middle Ages. Sometimes the most frightening thing wasn't death itself, but how people treated one another after death. And the story that took place at San Calocero, in the city of Albenga, Italy, is a striking example, one that leaves anyone who hears it with lingering questions. At this site, Italian archaeologists discovered the remains of a medieval teenage girl under extremely unusual circumstances. She was not buried according to normal rites. Instead, her body was thrown into a deep pit and covered with heavy stone slabs, as if someone wanted to keep her trapped beneath the earth forever. Doesn't that seem strange? Why would someone already dead still be treated as a danger? According to researchers, the burial method itself is clear evidence. This girl was considered a threat even in death, and notably, this was not an isolated case in the area. Earlier, in September 2014, at the same location, a research team led by Professor Felipe Pergola from the Pontifical Institute of Christian Archaeology uncovered another skeleton, that of a 13-year-old girl. She had been buried face down with her face turned toward the ground, a highly unusual practice often reserved for those believed to be deviant or dangerous. If you look deeper into this period, you'll find that such burial practices were not uncommon. People sometimes placed bricks in the mouths of the dead, drove stakes through their bodies, or even severed heads and limbs. The sole purpose was to prevent them from coming back. In both cases at San Calocero, whether burying the body face down or weighing it down with heavy stones, the meaning was the same: to stop those suspected of being witches from rising again. Further analysis of the 13-year-old girl revealed that she suffered from scurvy, a condition caused by a lack of vitamin C. But in the Middle Ages, when medical knowledge was limited, symptoms such as pale skin and physical weakness could easily be misinterpreted as signs of something sinister. Think about it. When people cannot understand illness, how do they explain it? Returning to the newly discovered skeleton at San Calocero, scientists estimate that this girl died between the ages of 15 and 17, with a height of only about 4 feet 9 inches. A small, frail body, and perhaps that very frailty made her the target of fear within her community. According to archaeologist Stefano Roacchio, the team is still awaiting radiocarbon dating results, but initial findings suggest the burial took place sometime between the 9th and 15th centuries. This means the remains could be even older than the case discovered in 2014. What makes the story even more haunting are the burn marks found on her body. According to anthropologist Elena Delu, the girl had been burned at an unknown location before being brought to San Calocero in a severely charred condition. Notably, the body tissues appear to have been burned while still soft, suggesting that the burning may have occurred before death or immediately afterward. In other words, no one can say for certain whether she was still alive when the flames began. After being burned, her body was transported and buried hastily. There was no ceremony, no preparation. She was simply carried, thrown into a pit, and covered with heavy stones. The position of the body reflects this clearly. Her head was pressed against the side of the pit, forcing her neck downward, with her chin nearly touching her chest. It's an image that sends a chill down the spine just to imagine. Preliminary analysis also indicates that she suffered from parotid hyperestosis, a condition linked to severe anemia and malnutrition. Her skull and the areas around her eyes show abnormal porous lesions, signs of a body weakened by deprivation. Weak tooth enamel further suggests that she endured a childhood marked by prolonged nutritional deficiency. When you piece everything together, a small body, pale complexion, visible signs of illness, possibly accompanied by bruising, you begin to understand why those around her were afraid. In their eyes, she was no longer an ordinary girl, but something that should not exist. And so they labeled her a witch. No one knows whether the two girls in this story were related, not even the scientists. But whatever the answer may be, they were both victims of a time when fear and lack of understanding could determine a person's fate. 600-year-old chapel in Scotland, where witches were imprisoned and burned alive. You know, our world is a fascinating place. Some locations seem mysterious and mystical on the surface, yet turn out to be completely ordinary. Others appear perfectly normal at first glance, but have witnessed some of the darkest chapters in history. The St. Mary's Chapel, located inside St. Nicholas Church in the city of Aberdeen, Scotland, is one such place. Few would imagine that behind the chapel's ancient walls once stood a prison for people accused of witchcraft hundreds of years ago. St. Mary's Chapel was built in the 15th century, and according to historical records, it served not only as a religious space, but also as a place where suspected witches were detained and put on trial. In particular, during the period known as the Great Witch Hunt in Aberdeen in 1597, a total of 23 women and 1 man were brought here for trial. There's a small detail here that sends a chill down your spine: a metal ring fixed to the chapel's northern wall. It's only about 2 inches in diameter, nothing remarkable at first glance. But according to researchers, this ring was used to shackle those accused of witchcraft during their imprisonment. Arthur Winfield, who led the church restoration project, once said that to the naked eye, it seems ordinary. But when compared with historical records, its meaning becomes something entirely different. So what caused so many people to be labeled as witches at the time? According to historian Chris Crowley from the University of Aberdeen, it all stemmed from a turbulent period in history. After James VI passed the Witchcraft Act 1563, the persecution and trial of suspected witches spread rapidly across Scotland. Later, when he became James I in 1603, these beliefs spread even further. In reality, the witch-hunting wave was not limited to Scotland. It began in Europe in the 15th century, spread to Scotland in the 1590s, and eventually crossed the Atlantic to the Americas in the 17th century. The result was infamous trials such as the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts, United States, where many people were convicted based solely on belief and fear. During that time, both Protestants and Catholics believed that witches were connected to the devil. And sometimes, all it took was unusual behavior, a rumor, or even a personal conflict for someone to be put on trial. One of the most famous cases in Aberdeen in 1597 involved a mother and her son. The mother, Jane Wishart, faced 18 charges related to witchcraft, from allegedly casting spells that made neighbors ill to being accused of controlling a mysterious brown dog that attacked her son-in-law after an argument. She was even accused of cutting off the limbs of a hanged corpse to use in magical rituals. Just hearing these accusations gives you a sense of how severe they were. Her son, Thomas Laius, did not escape either. He was accused of leading a group of witches, organizing midnight dances with the devil at Aberdeen's fish market. In the end, both mother and son were strangled before being burned at the stake, a brutal punishment suffered by many at the time. Fast forward to modern times, between 2006 and 2007, a major archaeological excavation took place on the eastern side of St. Nicholas Church, before the site was renovated into a community center as part of the Kirk of St. Nicholas project. Archaeologists hoped to find remains of those accused of witchcraft, but the results surprised many. No remains of witches were found. Instead, more than 2,000 skeletons were discovered buried beneath the eastern floor of the church. Most of them dated to before the 1560s, the time when the Protestant Reformation in Scotland began to prohibit burials inside churches. So where were the accused witches actually buried? Or were they erased entirely from history, leaving behind no trace at all? That question still lingers to this day, unanswered. But one thing is clear: the story of St. Mary's Chapel is more than just an archaeological discovery. It is a reminder that in the past, fear and blind belief could turn a sacred place into a prison and transform ordinary people into criminals in the blink of an eye. Terrifying, isn't it? 8 million dog mummies in a tomb dedicated to an ancient Egyptian god. Millions of animal mummies buried solely to honor a god. Sounds like something out of a fantasy movie, right? But surprisingly, this is a real story that took place at Saqqara, part of ancient Memphis in Egypt, one of the oldest and most mysterious burial grounds in the world. As you may know, the ancient Egyptians were famous for their deep belief in the afterlife. Among the many gods they worshipped, one name stands out: Anubis, the god of death, depicted with the head of a jackal. To show their devotion, they didn't just build temples for him, they also constructed massive catacombs nearby. And recently, when archaeologists excavated these underground chambers, they were astonished to discover nearly 8 million dog mummies inside, ranging from puppies to fully grown dogs, packed densely beneath the ground. Yes, you heard that right. Millions of mummies laid one after another in dark, maze-like tunnels stretching deep underground. Even more remarkably, it wasn't just dogs. Archaeologists also found mummies of other animals, including jackals, foxes, falcons, cats, and even mongooses. This reveals that animal worship in ancient Egyptian culture wasn't limited to a single species. It was part of a complex and widespread belief system. However, not all of these mummies have survived intact. Many have deteriorated or broken down over time. Some of the damage was caused by tomb robbers, but more surprisingly, there was a period when people actually dug up these mummies to use as fertilizer for agriculture. When you hear that, doesn't it highlight a striking contrast between the sacred beliefs of the past and how these remains were treated later? Looking back in history, in 1897, French archaeologist Jacques de Morgan mapped 2 dog mummy catacombs in Memphis. Over time, however, one of them, the smaller tunnel, became inaccessible, buried under desert sands, and further affected by an earthquake in 1992. As a result, modern researchers have focused their efforts on the larger catacomb to better understand this mystery. The lead researcher, Paul Nicholson from the Cardiff University, spent years analyzing both the stone structure and the mummies within. He explained that when you visit Saqqara today, you'll see a vast desert landscape with towering pyramids and a few visible monuments related to animal worship. But hidden beneath the surface lies an entirely different world. This catacomb is believed to have been built around the 4th century BCE. And here's an especially fascinating detail. On the ceiling of the tunnels, scientists discovered a fossil of a marine vertebrate dating back about 48 million years. This raises an intriguing question. Did the ancient Egyptians notice the fossil when they built the structure, or was it simply a secret left behind by nature? Inside the catacomb, exploration is far from easy. According to Nicholson, it's a long, dark tunnel system with almost no natural light at the entrance. To go deeper, you must rely on artificial lighting. Just imagine stepping inside, surrounded by darkness, confined spaces, and millions of mummies lining the walls. What would that feel like? Honestly, I love exploration, but something like this might make me think twice. The biggest question now is, why did the ancient Egyptians mummify dogs in such enormous numbers? Many researchers believe these animals were bred and sacrificed as offerings to Anubis, serving as a way to send prayers to the afterlife. Each mummy may have represented a wish, a belief, or a hope from someone living at the time. It stands as powerful evidence of humanity's deep faith in gods, in death, and in life beyond death. And sometimes, it's precisely those beliefs that lead to creations so extraordinary that even the modern world can't help but marvel and keep asking questions. The tiny red-faced mummy, 2,600 years old, reveals a painful secret misunderstood for 40 years. Some mysteries are not hidden within massive pyramids or grand tombs, but in things so small they are almost overlooked. And this is one such case. A mummy so tiny you could hold it in your hands, yet one that has puzzled scientists for more than 40 years. This mummy quietly appeared in a collection at Swansea University, having been brought from ancient Egypt to Wales in 1971. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than an ordinary miniature mummy, but the closer researchers looked, the more something felt off. And it was precisely that unease that turned it into one of the most difficult mysteries to explain. The mummy is catalogued as W1013. What makes it stand out immediately is its size, only about 20 inches long. It is wrapped in stiff yellow linen, decorated with blue stripes with a broad collar and, most strikingly, a face painted red. That might sound typical, but these details confused experts. In ancient Egyptian customs, a red-painted face was usually reserved for adult males. So why would such a small mummy be prepared in this way? And more importantly, what exactly is it? Today, W1013 is housed at the Egypt Center at Swansea University. It is believed to date back to around 600 BCE, meaning it is over 2,600 years old. For more than 4 decades, experts studied and debated it. Some even argued that attempts to decipher the small inscriptions on the mummy were pointless, suspecting it might be a forgery created in the 19th century. Then came a turning point on April 28, 2014, when imaging specialist Paula Griffiths from the university's College of Medicine analyzed the mummy using CT scanning technology. The results surprised everyone. Inside the wrappings, most of the material was identified as linen, but deeper within, scientists observed a dark object about 4 inches long. This single detail opened up an entirely new line of explanation. Many experts now believe this could be a mummified fetus, still enclosed within the amniotic sac. Based on the size of the bones detected, especially the femur, they estimate the fetus was between 12 and 16 weeks old. This means W1013 is not a tiny mummy in the usual sense, but possibly a life that never had the chance to be born. The CT images also revealed something more, an amulet inside the mummy, an object typically placed with the dead to protect them in the afterlife. There was also another dark area resembling bead strands or decorative tassels. These details suggest this was not something created randomly, but rather part of a deliberate burial process with clear spiritual meaning. According to the Egypt Center, finding such objects inside a mummy is not unusual in ancient Egyptian culture. On the contrary, it reflects a perspective very different from that of the modern Western world. Today, the loss of a fetus is often handled more simply, but in ancient Egypt, unborn lives were still cared for and buried with ceremony and respect. A well-known example of this can be found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, where 2 small coffins containing fetuses were discovered, dating to the New Kingdom, around 1550 to 1070 BCE. These findings show that certain areas within tombs were reserved not only for children, but also for fetuses, even including placentas wrapped in blood-soaked cloth. When all of this evidence is put together, researchers, including Carolyn Graves Brown, have gradually leaned toward a deeply emotional hypothesis. W1013 may indeed be a fetus, a profound loss for a family more than 2,600 years ago. A loss so significant that they chose to mummify, bury, and mourn it with the utmost care and ritual. From an object once suspected to be a fake, dismissed for decades, it has ultimately revealed a deeply human story about loss, about love, and about how people confront death. And when you think about it, isn't this the kind of grief that even today we can still understand? The mysterious alien mummy found in Russia. Let me ask you this: if a creature less than 10 inches tall, with an unusually large head and eyes that take up almost its entire face, were discovered as an actual body, what would you think it was? A deformed child? A hoax? Or something humanity has never truly understood? If you're not sure, let's look at a real story that took place in the town of Kishtim in the Chelyabinsk Oblast, Russia, and see if we can get closer to an answer. In 1996, local police in this town discovered a small, strange-looking being. It had a large head, a distorted face, and oversized eyes that dominated its features, giving it an appearance many associated with what people often call an alien. From that moment on, the name the Kishtim alien began to spread. Medical experts soon became involved and conducted an autopsy to determine exactly what it was. The analysis was led by Dr. Stanislav Samoshkin, head of pathology at the local hospital. After careful examination, he reached a conclusion that surprised many. The creature was neither human nor any known animal. According to him, the skull structure was completely different. While a typical human skull consists of 6 main bones, this creature appeared to have only 4. Not only that, but its entire skeletal structure showed unusual characteristics that did not match any congenital deformities recognized by modern medicine. This led him to believe it could represent a previously unknown form of life. The creature measured about 10 inches in length, with a swollen and deformed head. Its eye sockets were extremely large, nearly covering the entire face, creating an appearance that would seem both strange and unsettling if you tried to imagine it. Interestingly, some researchers noted similarities between this being and another mysterious specimen known as Ata, discovered in the Atacama Desert in 2003. This resemblance further fueled speculation about the unclear origins of the Kishtim creature. However, despite various analyses, researchers have never been able to determine exactly where it came from. One person particularly interested in the case was Vadim Chernobrov, a researcher of UFOs and paranormal phenomena. He traveled from Moscow to examine the body and later declared it a groundbreaking discovery. Preliminary genetic analyses also suggested that the remains were not human, but ironically, these conclusions could never be fully verified. Before laboratories could conduct more in-depth studies, the body mysteriously disappeared. According to police reports, it may have been stolen from the hospital morgue. And from that point on, the story took a darker turn, filled with rumors and unsettling coincidences. A series of strange events followed, leading many to believe the mummy carried a curse. Tamara Prosverina, who had been involved in discovering the creature, died in a traffic accident not long afterward. Chernobrov himself suffered a sudden paralysis from the waist down during his research. His health rapidly declined and he passed away soon after. And it didn't end there. Another scholar, Mark Milkiker, also became a victim. He fell seriously ill while investigating the case and later died of a heart attack after returning to Moscow. All of this has turned the story of the Kishtim alien into more than just a strange discovery. It has become a haunting mystery where the line between science and belief begins to blur. And to this day, the question remains unanswered. What was that creature really? An unknown form of life, or simply a mystery beyond our current ability to explain? What do you think the answer is? And how would you react if you were the first person to see it? Leave a comment below and let's discuss. 17. Tiny coffins containing miniature mummies in Scotland. When people think of mummies, they usually picture Egypt, pharaohs, and the famous art of mummification. But what if I told you that right in the United Kingdom, on a hill steeped in legend, there exist mummies no larger than the palm of your hand? Would you believe it? If not, let's head to Arthur's Seat, a hill located east of Edinburgh Castle in the city of Edinburgh, Scotland. This isn't just a famous landmark, it's also tied to legends of Camelot, the mythical castle of King Arthur. And it was here, in a place filled with myth, that a strange discovery was made in 1836. According to records from the Times dated July 20th, 1836, 5 boys out rabbit hunting stumbled upon an unusual rock formation. Curious, they crawled into a small cave, and what they saw left them frozen in place. In front of them were 17 tiny mummies. Unlike the large bandage-wrapped mummies most people imagine, these were incredibly small, each about 4 inches long. More precisely, they were 17 carved wooden figures, each placed inside its own small coffin. What's remarkable is that they were not crude. On the contrary, each figure was carefully dressed with detailed clothing resembling miniature human attire. And it doesn't stop there. The way they were arranged puzzled researchers even more. The 17 coffins were laid out in 3 horizontal rows, 2 rows of 8 and a third row containing just 1. A strange configuration, unlike anything seen in known burial practices. But here's the shocking part. When they were first discovered, the boys had no idea of their value. According to reports from the time, they even burned some of the coffins shortly afterward. Hard to believe, right? A major mystery almost destroyed from the very beginning. Fortunately, a professor named Ferguson managed to rescue the remaining coffins. He took them home and became the first to open them, discovering the small mummy-like figures inside. However, after that initial discovery, the story fell into silence. For more than 60 years, almost no research was recorded. The coffins were gradually lost, scattered across private collections, and their mystery faded into obscurity. It wasn't until 1901, 65 years later, that the story resurfaced. At that time, 8 of the original 17 coffins were rediscovered and transferred to the National Museum of Scotland. From there, serious scientific study finally began. Analysis showed that all the mummies were made of wood and carved with knives. One unusual detail stood out. Each figure was missing one arm. According to scientists, this may have been intentional, making it easier to dress them in clothing. Of the 8 remaining figures, only 3 were finally finished with smooth edges. From this, archaeologists concluded that at least 2 different individuals were involved in creating them. It doesn't end there. 2 experts, Simpson and Menifee, analyzed the clothing and discovered a crucial detail. The garments could not have been made before 1812, the time when cotton began replacing linen in Scotland. This means these mummies are not truly ancient as once believed. From that point, many theories emerged. Some locals believed they were witchcraft charms. Others thought they were protective talismans made by sailors before setting out to sea. But one theory stands out as especially chilling, linking the coffins to the infamous killers Birch and Hershe from the early 19th century. The pair were believed to have murdered 17 victims, a number that eerily matches the 17 coffins. However, this theory also faces strong opposition. Of the victims, 12 were women, while most of the figures appear to be dressed in male-style clothing. And so, to this day, the mystery of the 17 tiny coffins at Arthur's Seat remains unsolved. No one knows exactly why they were made, and perhaps even more puzzling, where the remaining 9 coffins are today. So what do you think? Is this simply superstition or a message left behind by people of the past, one we still don't fully understand? Mummy buried alive in a coffin haunted China for over 200 years. Just imagine this for a moment. One day, people declare that you're dead when in reality, you're only in a deep coma. Then suddenly, you wake up, trapped inside a sealed coffin beneath the freezing ground. No one can hear your screams for help. There's no way out. What do you think that feeling would be like? And if you still can't picture such a horrifying scenario, then let's travel back in time to 1999 to the city of Kishtim in China's Heilongjiang province, where an event unfolded that sounded like something straight out of a horror movie, yet it was completely real. It all began quite normally. At the time, a group of villagers was digging up roads as part of a city reconstruction project. During the excavation, they unexpectedly discovered blue-colored bricks buried deep underground. At first, nobody paid much attention, assuming they were simply leftover construction materials from long ago. But as they continued digging deeper, more and more bricks appeared, until eventually an entire brick wall slowly emerged from the soil. That was when people began to suspect they had uncovered an ancient tomb. However, night was falling, and the work had to stop until the next day. But you know how stories about ancient graves spread like wildfire? That very night, driven by greed, 2 young men from the village secretly returned to the site carrying lanterns and shovels, determined to open the coffin in search of valuable artifacts. And then came the moment the coffin lid creaked open. What appeared before them was not gold, silver, or treasure. Instead, it was something they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Can you guess what it was? Yes. It was a body lying inside the coffin. But the corpse was not peacefully resting the way most people would imagine. Instead, it was frozen in an absolutely horrifying position, mouth wide open, limbs twisted and thrashing, clothes disheveled and torn apart. It did not look like someone who had died peacefully. It looked like someone who had desperately fought to survive. The horrifying sight sent the 2 young men into complete panic. They fled the tomb in terror and immediately reported the discovery to local authorities. By dawn the next morning, an archaeological team had already arrived at the scene and sealed off the entire area. But even seasoned experts with years of experience were shaken when they saw what was inside. Initial examinations revealed that the tomb itself was extremely simple. There was no gold, no jewelry, and no treasure. Only a single coffin and 26 coins dating back to the Qing dynasty. But the strangest part was the body itself. Further analysis showed that the remains belonged to a woman who had died more than 200 years earlier. Yet her body was astonishingly well preserved. Her skin, muscles, and joints had remained almost completely intact, avoiding the normal process of decomposition. Her eyes were wide open. Her mouth remained stretched in terror, as if her death had never truly ended. Based on bone structure, experts estimated that she was around 25 years old when she died. Archaeologists also noticed that she had 3 ear piercings, something highly unusual for ordinary citizens during the Qing dynasty. Under Qing regulations, commoners typically had only 1 or 2 ear piercings. Because of this detail, experts believe she likely belonged to a higher social class, possibly a Manchu noblewoman or perhaps the concubine of a government official. But the mystery did not end there. After transporting the body to a laboratory, scientists discovered a black lotus-shaped object near her feet. Further analysis revealed something shocking. It was a fully formed placenta. That meant the woman had been pregnant when she died. So what really happened to her? What actually caused her death? After extensive research, experts reached a chilling conclusion. She had not died from a deadly disease or a rare disorder. Instead, she likely suffered from an ordinary illness. As her condition worsened, she fell into a deep coma. But because medical knowledge at the time was extremely limited, doctors mistakenly declared her dead. Her family never realized the mistake. They quickly arranged a funeral and buried her. Sometime later, the poor woman regained consciousness inside the coffin. In the darkness, in the cramped space, with barely any air left. No one could hear her. Terrified, she screamed, kicked, clawed, and fought with every ounce of strength she had, trying desperately to escape, but it was hopeless. Eventually, she ran out of energy and truly died. A death far more horrifying than anyone could imagine. And that tragic moment explained everything. The twisted body position, the wide-open mouth, and even the reason her remains had stayed perfectly preserved for centuries. Because once she consumed all the oxygen inside the coffin, the environment became nearly vacuum-sealed, accidentally preventing the natural decomposition process and preserving her body almost intact. This also explains why in countries such as China and Vietnam, there once existed a tradition of keeping the deceased at home for 3 to 7 days before burial. It wasn't simply superstition, it was a precaution against cases of false death, situations where people in deep comas were mistakenly believed to be dead. So if people say the 1999 discovery in Qiqihar was more than just an archaeological find, they may not be exaggerating at all. It was a chilling reminder of the limitations of medicine in the past and of one of humanity's most primal fears, being buried alive while still conscious. 11 ancient teeth that prove dentistry was surprisingly advanced 9,000 years ago. Can you believe it if I told you that while humans were still living in primitive stone and mud villages, with no modern machines, no electricity, and no hospitals, there were already ancient dentists somewhere in the world who knew how to drill teeth and treat cavities nearly 9,000 years ago? And what shocked scientists even more was that the technique was so sophisticated that it far exceeded what people once believed prehistoric humans were capable of. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But it's true, and the evidence comes from a stunning discovery announced after excavations carried out by scientists from the University of Poitiers in collaboration with the Guimet Museum. During their study of an ancient cemetery, researchers discovered a total of 11 human teeth that had been drilled, belonging to several different individuals. These teeth were dated to around 7,500 to 9,000 years ago, meaning they existed during a time when humanity had not yet entered modern civilization. Just hearing that is enough to make most people uncomfortable, right? Normally, even the thought of dental drilling makes people cringe, let alone imagining it happening thousands of years ago, when there was no anesthesia, no medical machinery, and no dental equipment of any kind. But when scientists examined the teeth more closely, they discovered small holes measuring about 0.05 to 0.13 inches in diameter and between 0.02 and 0.14 inches deep. These holes were clearly not random. They had distinct cone-shaped and cylindrical forms, proving they had been made carefully and intentionally. This immediately raised a major question among researchers. Who performed these procedures and how did they do it? Paleoanthropologist Roberto Macchiarelli from the University of Poitiers, who was also the lead author of the study, believes this was most likely an ancient form of medical treatment. According to him, many of the discovered teeth showed signs of severe tooth decay. Some had even been drilled more than once. He explained that the procedure was almost certainly not cosmetic, because the drilled areas were located in places that would have been very difficult to see. If the purpose had only been decoration or appearance, no one would have gone through such effort in nearly invisible locations. During the excavation, researchers determined that at least 9 different individuals had these drilled teeth. One person had as many as 3 treated teeth, while another had a single tooth drilled twice. And the discoveries did not stop there. Under microscopic examination, experts found that in at least one case, not only had the tooth itself been drilled, but the inner pulp cavity had also been modified with remarkable precision. In other words, whoever performed this procedure did not simply know how to drill the surface, they also had a surprisingly detailed understanding of human tooth structure. Scientists also observed signs of wear on the teeth after the drilling had been performed. This proved that these individuals continued living and using their teeth to chew food afterward. That means this was not something done to corpses or part of a bizarre ritual. It was a genuine medical treatment performed on living people. Even more astonishing, Researchers believe the holes may have been sealed with a tar-like substance that could have functioned as an ancient dental filling material. Because of this, anthropologist Clark Spencer Larson from Ohio State University stated that this discovery provides extremely convincing evidence that ancient humans possessed dental knowledge and were capable of directly treating the teeth of living patients. Unfortunately, there is one mystery that still confuses scientists. This technique appears to have existed for around 1,500 years, but then completely disappeared when humanity entered the Metal Age about 7,000 years ago. Cemeteries from later periods show no trace of this procedure anymore, even though dental health during those times remained extremely poor. Even Machiavelli himself admitted that scientists cannot understand why this knowledge vanished entirely, and perhaps that is what makes this discovery truly terrifying. Could it be that thousands of years ago, there were civilizations with medical knowledge far more advanced than we ever imagined? No one knows for certain, but it is entirely possible that human history still contains enormous missing pieces that modern science has yet to fully explain. Time has erased nearly all traces of the past. Ancient records no longer survive, and those civilizations have left behind only a few scattered fragments buried deep beneath the earth. So what do you think? Were ancient humans really as primitive as we've always believed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments so everyone can discuss it together. The most mysterious skeletons in Vietnam that terrified archaeologists. Beneath the ground of Vietnam lie secrets that have remained buried for hundreds, even tens of thousands of years. And sometimes, a single accidental excavation is enough to send chills down the spine of modern people when they come face to face with strange human remains that science still cannot fully explain today. Some skeletons were found inside caves, nearly fossilized yet astonishingly intact. Some remains over 200 years old released a red liquid that looked like blood when the coffins were opened. There were even 4,000-year-old graves in which the teeth of the dead remained perfectly white, as if they were brand new. And perhaps most disturbing of all was a 10,000-year-old skeleton discovered with two mysterious seashells placed directly inside the eye sockets of the deceased. Just hearing about these discoveries is enough to make anyone shiver, right? But once you learn the full stories behind them, they become even more terrifying. So let's begin with the first discovery in Quang Binh Province, Vietnam. This discovery began on November 17th, when officials in Minh Hoa district announced that local residents had discovered two mysterious skeletons inside Ton Cave. Soon afterward, experts from the British Cave Research Association quickly arrived to investigate. They reported that the two skeletons were almost completely intact despite having remained inside the cave for an extremely long time. Because the remains had been covered by layers of limestone stalactites, the skeletons had become naturally fossilized. After initial examinations, many experts believed the remains were most likely those of ancient Vietnamese people. However, local residents had different theories. Some believed the skeletons could belong to members of the Con Vuong resistance movement who fought during the reign of Emperor Ham Nghi more than 100 years ago. Local historical records mention that the Tan Hoa area was once used by resistance fighters hiding in caves around the Tu Lan Valley to battle colonial forces. Of course, others suggested the skeletons may simply have belonged to people who got lost in the forest several decades ago. But to this day, the true identity of those remains remains a complete mystery. However, if the story in Quang Binh sparked curiosity, then the discovery in Nam Dinh Province left many people deeply disturbed. In July 2009, at Lac Mon Parish in Truc Hung Commune, workers were relocating 8 ancient graves when a man named Nguyen Van Huân witnessed something he claimed he would never forget for the rest of his life. As workers dug into the coffin of Pharaoh Do Tu, a red liquid with the smell of fresh blood suddenly began flowing out from inside the coffin. Huân later recalled that the moment he realized it resembled human blood, he became so terrified that he fainted on the spot. According to priest Nguyen Duc Trong, Do Tu lived during the reign of Emperor Tu Duc, around the period from 1838 to 1867. At that time, Catholics were heavily persecuted and many believers were executed unjustly. After his death, Do Tu was buried alongside 7 others. In 1958, the remains were relocated to a centralized cemetery, but the coffins were never opened. It was not until July 2009, when the parish expanded its grounds and moved the graves again, that the strange phenomenon appeared. What made the story even more disturbing was the wave of rumors that followed. People claimed the mysterious red liquid could heal illnesses. One rumor said rubbing it on the back could cure hunchbacks, while another claimed applying it to the legs relieved joint pain. However, Vietnamese researchers insist these are merely exaggerated stories with no verified scientific evidence. And the mysteries did not stop there. In Hanoi, archaeologists also discovered ancient graves dating back as far as 4,000 years at the Din Trang archaeological site in Duc Thu Commune. During the 7th excavation, experts uncovered numerous burials belonging to the ancient Phuong Nguyen culture. Associate Professor Dr. Nguyen Lun Kung stated that these were among the most beautifully preserved human remains ever discovered in Vietnam. Some skeletons had become nearly complete fossils, and most remarkably, some teeth remained bright white, even after thousands of years once the surrounding dirt was cleaned away. Scientists determined the age of the remains using fossil analysis technology and associated cultural artifacts. But perhaps the greatest mystery of all was the discovery made in November 2012 at Pha Vai Cave in Xuân Tan Commune. For generations, this cave had been tied to legends of the mountain ghost of Pha Vai. Local residents believed the cave was sacred and that anyone who entered without permission could encounter strange and frightening events. After repeated attempts to gain access, archaeologists from the Vietnam Institute of Archaeology were finally allowed to investigate the cave. Inside, they discovered hundreds of ancient stone tools and, most importantly, a human skeleton estimated to be around 10,000 years old. What shocked archaeologists the most was the skull. After cleaning the remains, experts discovered 2 seashells carefully placed inside the eye sockets of the deceased. According to Professor Nguyen Lun Kung, the shells belong to a marine species scientifically known as Cypraea arabica, a burial practice never before found in any remains from the same era anywhere in Southeast Asia. And it was precisely this ritual of placing seashells into the eyes of the dead that revealed yet another hidden piece of the burial traditions practiced by prehistoric people in Vietnam tens of thousands of years ago. You see, beneath the ground of Vietnam, countless historical mysteries still remain unsolved, mysteries disturbing enough to haunt anyone who learns about them. So what do you think? Right beneath where we are standing right now, could there still be ancient skeletons silently resting underground, carrying mysterious stories from thousands of years ago? If so, leave a comment below and share the discoveries you know about. Massive treasure hoard with hundreds of pounds of mysterious gold buried beneath the ground in India. Nearly 420 pounds of gold hidden directly beneath the foundation of a house. Sounds like something out of an adventure movie, doesn't it? But this was a real event that happened in the village of Pembarthi, located in the state of Telangana, more than 2 years ago. It was only an accidental discovery, yet it caused chaos throughout the entire region because of the enormous value of the treasure buried underground for hundreds of years. Here's what happened. 2 years ago, a group of workers under the direction of Narasimha, a local real estate businessman, were digging the foundation for a house when they unexpectedly discovered an ancient pot buried only about 2 feet beneath the hardened soil. When the pot was opened, everyone present was left speechless. Inside was not just a few ordinary antiques, but an enormous treasure trove filled with gold, silver, and rare rubies. Specifically, the collection included 22 pairs of gold earrings, along with many other finely crafted artifacts. There were also 26 silver bars, 5 necklaces, and numerous ancient silver objects. What truly shocked people was the total weight of the treasure. The gold alone weighed approximately 418.5 pounds. Meanwhile, the silver weighed more than 3.8 pounds. Just hearing those numbers makes it difficult to imagine how valuable this treasure really was. Because of this, news of the discovery spread rapidly throughout Pembarthi and eventually across many parts of India. As soon as Narasimha reported the incident, local authorities immediately arrived to secure the area and confiscate all valuable artifacts. At the same time, they ordered all digging and construction activities to stop until further notice. Officials suspected there could still be additional historical artifacts buried beneath the site that had not yet been uncovered. After an initial examination, experts concluded that the items likely dated back to the Kakatiya dynasty, a powerful dynasty that ruled southern India between the 12th and 14th centuries. The dynasty was once known for its immense wealth and influence, especially for its highly sophisticated metalworking and jewelry craftsmanship. Because of that, many people believe the treasure may once have belonged to a noble family or was buried during a time of war and chaos to protect it from looters. Interestingly, discoveries of ancient gold and silver buried underground are actually not uncommon in India. Before this incident, several groups had secretly carried out illegal excavations in Pembarthi village in hopes of finding hidden treasure. This suggests that rumors about enormous riches buried beneath the region had existed among locals for a very long time. And apparently, those rumors were not baseless after all. In 2021, in the city of Pimpri Chinchwad, in the state of Maharashtra, police also seized another major treasure hoard containing 216 ancient gold coins and a copper vessel with a total estimated value of more than 1.3 million Indian rupees, equivalent to roughly $15,500 at the time. The gold coins carried the seal of Raja Muhammad Shah and dated from approximately 1720 to 1750 AD. According to official estimates, each coin was worth between 60,000 and 70,000 Indian rupees. What makes the story even more fascinating is that authorities only discovered the treasure after receiving reports that a local resident was illegally possessing ancient gold. During the investigation, police learned that the coins had actually been found completely by accident by two workers digging in the ground. Hearing stories like these makes you realize that beneath the soil of India, countless secrets may still remain hidden. Secrets that modern humanity has yet to fully uncover. The giant underground labyrinth of Egypt, a thousands-year-old mystery, finally decoded. When people think of ancient Egypt, most immediately picture the massive pyramids standing proudly in the desert for thousands of years. But did you know that the thing that has haunted archaeologists for centuries is not above the ground at all? It lies deep beneath the scorching sands. For a very long time, rumors have existed about a gigantic, mysterious labyrinth built beneath the ground of ancient Egypt. A structure said to be so enormous that anyone who entered could become lost forever, never finding the way out again. For many years, people believed it was only a legend, a story exaggerated over time. Yet after centuries of searching, science has finally proven that this labyrinth may actually exist. The story began with the ancient writings of the famous Greek historian Herodotus. In documents dating back to around the 4th century BC, he described an underground Egyptian labyrinth that he claimed was even more magnificent than the pyramids themselves. According to Herodotus, the structure contained countless rooms and endless corridors connected like a giant web. A person who took a single wrong turn could lose all sense of direction in the deep darkness beneath the earth. For centuries afterward, scholars and scientists continued trying to solve the mystery of this legendary labyrinth. But there was one major problem. No one knew exactly where it was located. Then, in the 17th century, German scholar Athanasius Kircher attempted to reconstruct the image of the mysterious Egyptian labyrinth based on Herodotus's writings. According to his theory, the labyrinth was located underground near the pyramid of Amenemhat III in the region of Hawara, about 62 miles from the capital city of Cairo. However, at that time, everything remained purely hypothetical. There was no clear evidence proving the labyrinth truly existed. And then hundreds of years passed. Many archaeological expeditions came and went in disappointment. Some people eventually concluded that the labyrinth was nothing more than a product of ancient imagination. But in 2008, everything began to change. A team of researchers from Belgium and Egypt carried out surveys near the pyramid of Amenemhat III in Hawara. During their underground investigation, they unexpectedly detected unusual anomalies deep beneath the desert sand. The results shocked the archaeological world. Geological scanning signals revealed a gigantic underground structure containing multiple open spaces and complex connecting pathways, closely matching the descriptions of the labyrinth found in ancient records. In other words, the thousands-year-old Egyptian legend might actually be real. After the discovery, the National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics joined the investigation to analyze all the scanning data. Experts used modern technology to reconstruct a 3D model of the mysterious structure hidden underground. And the more they studied it, the more they realized the labyrinth was far larger than anyone had originally imagined. A massive network of corridors, chambers, and complicated passageways gradually appeared through the digital reconstructions. This led many researchers to believe that the ancient Egyptians not only possessed extraordinary engineering abilities above ground, but also had the capability to create astonishing underground structures beneath the earth itself. However, the greatest mystery troubling scientists is the labyrinth's true purpose. Was it built to protect the tomb of a pharaoh? Was it a hidden vault for treasure? Or was it a secret ceremonial complex connected to the religious beliefs of ancient Egyptians? Even today, no one has a definitive answer, but the fact that this legendary labyrinth, once dismissed as myth, has now been shown to leave behind real traces of its existence is enough to amaze the entire world. Thousands of years ago, while many civilizations were still living under primitive conditions, the ancient Egyptians were already capable of constructing gigantic pyramids, temples that survived the passage of time, and even a massive complex labyrinth buried deep underground. Doesn't all of this prove one thing? The more humanity uncovers about ancient Egypt, the more modern people realize that this civilization still seems to be hiding far too many secrets waiting to be discovered. Mummy that grows hair and nails like a living person in Thailand. In many rural areas of Thailand, people still share mysterious stories that even modern science sometimes struggles to fully explain. There are temples believed to be so sacred that outsiders dare not approach them at night. There are villages surrounded by rumors of ghosts, black magic, and supernatural events that can send chills down anyone's spine. But among all these mysterious stories, one case once deeply shocked many people. It is the story of a young boy from a rural area in northern Thailand. A boy who passed away many years ago, yet whose body reportedly did not decompose as normal. Even more frightening, his hair and fingernails were said to continue growing as if he were still alive. According to information reported by the Qingdao news outlet in China, this strange event occurred in a rural area in northern Thailand. Although no one knows exactly when the story first began spreading, over the years, it has become a place that many curious visitors travel to, just to see the unusual remains with their own eyes. According to the boy's parents, their son died from a serious illness when he was only 6 years old. Like many families in Thailand, after his passing, they brought his body to a temple for burial so his spirit could rest peacefully. Everything seemed to end there, until strange dreams began to appear. The father and mother repeatedly dreamed of their son returning. In the dreams, the boy complained that he was not comfortable staying in the temple and wanted to come back home. At first, they thought these were just dreams caused by overwhelming grief after losing their child, but strangely, the dreams kept repeating night after night. Later, following the advice of a local spiritual practitioner, the family decided to move the boy's remains to another temple, hoping the situation would stop. But not long after, they began to dream of him again. This time, the boy still insisted on returning home. By this point, many people already started to feel uneasy hearing the story. In many rural parts of Thailand, such dreams are often considered to have strong spiritual significance. In the end, out of deep love for their child, the parents decided to bring his remains back home. Strangely, after that decision, the dreams completely stopped. Since then, the boy's body has been kept inside a glass display case in the family home, so they can still feel close to him every day. However, what has fascinated and disturbed the entire village for years is the unusual condition of the body. Although the boy's body has naturally dried out over time, his hair and fingernails are still said to continue growing, just like a living person. Many people, after hearing about it, traveled directly to the location to see it for themselves. Some were curious, some were afraid, and many believed it was a sacred phenomenon that science could not explain. There were even rumors in local folklore that praying in front of the boy's body could bring good luck or even winning the lottery. It may sound unbelievable, but in many rural parts of Asia, such spiritual stories spread very quickly. What is notable is that the villagers do not appear frightened by the boy's remains. Instead, they often bring sweets, toys, and children's items as offerings. Over time, the number of visitors increased so much that the parents had to build a small house nearby to accommodate worship and guests. To this day, the story of the boy whose body reportedly continues to grow hair and nails in northern Thailand remains highly controversial. Some people argue it is simply a natural phenomenon caused by the skin shrinking after death, making hair and nails appear longer. Others believe there is still something mysterious that science has not fully explained. So what do you think really happened to this boy's body? Do you have your own explanation? Leave a comment below if you know what might be going on so others can share their thoughts too. 2,000-year-old Roman city suddenly emerges beneath a construction site in France. Have you ever imagined that right beneath a modern construction site, where bulldozers and excavators operate every day, an entire ancient city, thousands of years old, could be buried underground? If not, then let's travel to the city of Uzès in southern France. While preparations were underway for construction on what seemed to be an ordinary plot of land, archaeologists made an astonishing discovery. They uncovered the remains of an ancient Roman city called Usitia, a city that had vanished from history for nearly 2,000 years. What shocked researchers even more was that before this discovery, Usitia had almost only existed in legends and a few rare ancient inscriptions. Historians knew of its name through a carved text found in Nîmes, an important outpost of the Roman Empire in ancient times. But beyond a few vague references, no one had ever found solid evidence that the city truly existed. That is, until the excavation in Uzès, France began. During underground surveying, experts gradually uncovered strange traces beneath layers of modern soil and concrete. Ancient walls, building foundations, and numerous Roman artifacts began to appear, leaving the entire archaeological team stunned. They soon realized this was not just a small ruin site, it was the buried remains of an entire ancient city lost for thousands of years. According to experts, Usitia is believed to have been founded around the 1st century BC and existed until about the 7th century AD. This was also the period when the Roman Empire reached its peak, with its territory stretching from Italy to many regions of what is now France. Because of this, the discovery of Usitia is not just a routine archaeological dig. It also helps humanity better understand how the Romans expanded and built cities across ancient Europe. But what excites archaeologists the most are the remains found inside the city. Among the discoveries, the most remarkable are Roman mosaics that have been surprisingly well preserved, despite being buried for nearly 2,000 years. These mosaics are not just decorative pieces, they are like time windows, allowing modern people to glimpse the lives of Roman citizens. The designs include intricate geometric patterns, carefully assembled with great craftsmanship. Interwoven within them are images of animals such as deer, ducks, owls, and eagles. Every detail reflects the beliefs, nature, and culture of ancient Roman society. In addition, archaeologists also discovered a house containing a large number of ancient clay jars. These were common household items in Roman daily life, typically used for storing food, oil, or other essentials. These jars help researchers better understand how the people of Usitia lived, ate, and preserved their belongings during the height of the Roman Empire. However, one of the most surprising discoveries was a room equipped with an ancient central heating system known as a hypocaust. At this point, many people might be shocked. We usually think modern heating systems only appeared a few hundred years ago, but in reality, the ancient Romans had already developed a system that circulated hot air beneath floors to heat entire buildings thousands of years ago. This technology is considered one of the most advanced innovations of the Roman world, proving that their civilization was far ahead of many others at the time. Interestingly, the area where the ancient city of Usitia was discovered is now the site of a boarding school built in 2019. No one ever imagined that beneath its modern foundations lay an entire ancient world forgotten by time. Even today, archaeologists continue to study and excavate surrounding areas, believing that many more secrets still lie hidden beneath the ground of Uzès, France. Each excavation is like opening a forgotten page of human history. What was buried for thousands of years is now slowly coming back into the light, retelling the story of an empire that once shaped the world. Truly fascinating, isn't it? The ancient tomb, older than the Egyptian pyramids and a 5,000-year-old mystery in Scotland. When people talk about the world's oldest ancient structures, most immediately think of the Egyptian pyramids. Those massive stone monuments standing in the desert for thousands of years continue to amaze humanity with their scale and mystery. But few people know that on a cold island in Scotland, there exists a tomb that is even older than the famous pyramids of Egypt. Even more astonishing, this structure has survived for over 5,000 years and remains remarkably intact to this day. This is the Maeshowe tomb, located on the Orkney Islands in Scotland, United Kingdom. It is a mysterious structure built during the Neolithic period, long before great civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, or China even emerged. At this point, many people naturally begin to wonder, how could people from the Stone Age, without modern machines, cranes, or advanced construction technology, build such a massive structure that has survived for millennia? That question is exactly what makes Maeshowe one of the most fascinating archaeological mysteries in Europe. According to researchers, Maeshowe was built over 5,000 years ago. This means it predates many of the famous pyramids of ancient Egypt. Even today, it is considered one of the best preserved Neolithic structures in Europe. From the outside, Maeshowe looks like a large grassy mound rising from the cold Scottish landscape. Without prior knowledge, many might mistake it for a natural hill. But stepping inside reveals a completely different world. A stone passage about 33 feet long, leading deep into the center of the tomb, opening into a vast and mysterious chamber. Massive stone blocks form the walls and interior rooms, creating a breathtaking and almost overwhelming atmosphere. What makes it even more extraordinary is that the entire structure was built using stones weighing tens of tons, with some blocks reaching up to about 66,000 pounds. Yet ancient builders managed to fit them together with incredible precision, without using any mortar at all. Just imagine this. Thousands of years ago, during the Stone Age, humans were already transporting enormous stones and assembling them into such a stable structure. Even thinking about it seems almost unbelievable, doesn't it? But it becomes even more astonishing. Inside Maeshowe, there is not just a single chamber, but a complex system of corridors and carefully constructed stone compartments. The upright stone slabs create an atmosphere that feels both sacred and mysterious, as if entering a completely different world frozen in time. According to archaeologists, Maeshowe was not simply a burial site for important leaders. It is believed to have also served as a ceremonial center for religious rituals during the Stone Age. Researchers suggest that ancient people may have gathered here to perform sacred rites, worship deities, and pray for protection, harvests, and peace for their communities. In this sense, Maeshowe was not just a tomb, it was a deeply spiritual symbol for the people of that era. And there is more that continues to impress archaeologists: its construction technique. Experts believe Maeshowe contains one of the most sophisticated stone architectural systems in Europe. Its precise design and structural complexity suggest that Neolithic people were far more advanced than previously thought. Because of its immense historical value, in 1999, the Maeshowe tomb in Scotland was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Since then, it has attracted archaeologists, researchers, and visitors from all over the world. The more we study Maeshowe, the more we realize that ancient civilizations may have possessed knowledge far beyond what we once imagined. So how exactly did they build it with such precision? Why has it survived for more than 5,000 years in Scotland's harsh climate? And how many more secrets are still hidden within those ancient stones? These are mysteries that remain unsolved. Even today, Maeshowe still stands on the cold Orkney Islands like a silent witness to history, quietly telling the story of the astonishing intelligence of prehistoric humans. And it strongly reminds us of one thing: human history still holds many mysteries that modern science has yet to fully explain. The centuries-old boat coffins, discovered beneath a rice field in Ha Tinh, Vietnam. Did you know that in many rural areas of Vietnam, people often say that beneath old rice fields, entire layers of history may still be hidden, unknown to anyone? And that is exactly what happened in Ha Tinh province. The story took place while workers were digging clay to make bricks in the Boi Hoa rice field, located in Cam Hung Commune, Cam Xuyen district, Ha Tinh province. They unexpectedly discovered a strange coffin carved entirely from a single large tree trunk. According to descriptions, the coffin is about 7.2 feet long and 1.6 feet wide. It was made from dark, polished mulberry wood. What makes it especially unique is that it was not assembled from multiple wooden planks like a normal coffin. Instead, it was hollowed out from a single massive tree trunk, forming a shape strikingly similar to an ancient boat. At this point, many people would naturally become curious. Why did ancient people use boat-shaped coffins? And why did this type of burial appear in Ha Tinh? These are questions that many people have asked. Because of this, shortly after the discovery, the workers and local authorities carefully moved the remains inside the coffin to the commune cemetery for proper reburial. The ancient coffin itself was lifted to the surface so that relevant authorities and archaeologists could study it. Based on initial assessments, archaeologists in Ha Tinh believe this is likely a form of ancient Vietnamese burial known as a boat coffin. a unique burial style that existed many centuries ago. Experts suggest that this tomb may date back to the later Li dynasty, around the 16th to 17th century, or it could even be older. What is especially remarkable is that shortly after the first discovery, another grave was found in the same Boi Hoa field, about 130 feet away. This second tomb also had a similar structure, with a hollowed-out tree trunk as its outer form. However, over time, the interior had almost completely deteriorated, leaving only decayed soil and organic remnants. The continuous discovery of such ancient graves suggests that this area may once have been an important burial ground for ancient Vietnamese communities hundreds of years ago. And in fact, this is not the first time mysterious boat coffins have been found in Ha Tin. Previously, in 2008 and 2009, similar ancient tombs were discovered in other parts of the province, such as Thien Loc Commune in Can Loc District and Cam Hui Commune in Cam Xuyen District. Notably, even in Cam Hung Commune, where this recent discovery was made, locals had already uncovered two similar boat-shaped graves in the Con Ken area of Thon 14 about 3 years earlier. Unfortunately, at that time, due to a lack of understanding of their archaeological value, those remains were lost over time. Hearing this makes us realize that beneath the soil of rural Vietnam, many historical secrets may still be hidden, waiting to be discovered. However, what fascinates archaeologists the most is the meaning behind these boat-shaped coffins, which clearly reflect the burial customs of ancient Vietnamese people. Many researchers believe that the image of a boat carried deep spiritual significance, symbolizing the journey of the deceased's soul to the afterlife. It was not merely a coffin, but a cultural, religious, and spiritual expression of ancient Vietnamese communities from hundreds of years ago. As you can see, the ancient world is full of mysteries and strange phenomena, from thousand-year-old skeletons to mysterious objects to massive structures whose builders remain unknown. Everything together has left us with an entire universe of knowledge to explore. So what about you? Which discovery above impressed you the most? Let me know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell next to it so you won't miss any fascinating discoveries from ancient history. And for now, goodbye and see you next time.